Good afternoon, everyone. I've got 4 o'clock straight up, so I think we ought to go ahead and start. This is the May 26th, 2026 City Council and Redevelopment Agency joint work session. Let the record reflect that all council/board members are present. I believe Councilmember Washington is online. Alicia, would you like to say hello?
Hi, everyone. Yep, I'm here.
Great, thank you. And so we are ready to go. As you know, this is our, it's just an extra long work session tonight, longer than normal. But we do have our open house, so we've got a lot to cover, so let's dive in. First item on our agenda today is proposed fiscal year 2026-2027 budget. We've got Lisa Stout talking about employee compensation and benefits. We all set for you, Lisa? And Allie. Okay, thank you. Welcome.
I wish I could talk about CED, but I cannot. It was an HR one.
We got about 15 minutes for you.
Okay,
So
I'll go fast. Great.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. So I'm Allie Workman. Heather Brisky is the HR risk director, but she has resigned, so I am filling in. So please be patient with me. I am acting at the moment, but I am excited to talk to you guys about all of the compensation that we have planned for this year. I appreciate, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the compensation concerns and thoughtfully and objectively. The purpose of my presentation is just to ensure the compensation structures remain defensible and that market aligned and reflect the level of responsibility and accountability and operational risk that's carried by Ogden City positions. Ogden City's compensation philosophy is built around 4 core principles: attract and retain qualified employees, remain externally competitive, and maintain internal equity and use consistent and fair administration. Going forward, these are just some of the discussion items that we will talk about. I only have 15 minutes, so we're going to go pretty quickly. The framework guiding Ogden City's compensation strategy, the approach is data-driven, market-informed, and performance-focused. And I'd like to focus a little bit more on number 3, our performance-focused. We have our best practices, Ogden City's compensation guidance, which aligns with our McGrath study that we did in 2020. We used that as a base, a foundation for our compensation structure, and we have been using their direction to look at the CPI and COLA strategies each year when we think about our next compensation structure. In fiscal year 26, we had 700 full-time positions, which included 10 floating sworn officer positions for police officer and 5 sworn firefighters as a floating. The floating was a great option so that we could have people onboarding and doing the process before, so that they had all of those prerequisites ready to begin working. Civilian employees, we had 429, 150 sworn police, and 122 sworn fire. Our total workforce, 1,109, and that's a pretty high number with our seasonal and temporary, so it was a great year. I mean, the year prior to that and a few years prior to that, we had a harder time maintaining seasonal and temporary employees, but it seems like the market for that has changed significantly. Today's municipal workforce, then this slide just highlights our discussions that extend beyond compensation and what that includes. Some key factors that we have to think about when we strategically plan for our compensation structure for the next year. A personal highlight on this slide that I'd like to talk about a little bit more is the succession planning. When we have employees who have worked for a really long time and they leave, we lose that institutional knowledge and the relationships that they've built. Oops. I just bruised, I don't know where I am. Where did it go? I don't have my clicker. Can I do that? Try to go back. There we go. Yeah, so we lose that institutional knowledge, and sometimes we talk about that, and it's hard to maintain people for a really long time, but with our structure, we really want to commit to maintaining talent and involving employees so that we do have that succession. With that, it's kind of, we lose the institutional knowledge, but we have to slow down. There's a curve to maintaining that takes employees a little bit of time to understand before they're up to speed of where like a prior employee was. So all of that's kind of factored in. Our full-time turnover rates this year were 13.71%. We have a acceptable turnover rate because turnover rate isn't necessarily always bad. This year we had a higher number of retirements as well. So, I mean, that's a good point. We did have more resignations as well. Going forward with this turnover, I really want to look at the department level so that I can give you guys those numbers next year, so that might be a little bit more insight. And this is just kind of highlighting those reasons on why turnover happens. We have indirect costs with loss in training time and project delays. And then there's the direct costs with recruitment, onboarding, equipment time. A fun example is that we went to a HR meeting, and I think one of the questions that they asked was, what's the cost of your onboarding? Not one HR person in the room could answer that because there's so many things that factor into that. There's training, there's computer costs, there's actual training and one-on-one time. So the true onboarding cost is kind of a hard metric to really understand and wrap your head around, but I created a huge formula. It's a big number. Let's just say there's a lot of people that plan and work towards onboarding our employees so that we can have a successful team. And then we just talked about the impact on the team as well. When people leave, others are carrying their weight. Others are picking up the slack. I really like the phrase, the energy can't be created or destroyed. And that's 100% true with Ogden City. We have great momentum at the time. Currently, we have great momentum. We're doing wonderful things right now, but it's a lot that everyone has to carry. So when we lose those people, we have to kind of rebuild a little bit. Ogden City labor market challenges, just some of the challenges that we face and that we have to really think about when we are planning for the next year's budget. I wanted to show this slide too, to show the regional compensation comparables and just what other cities are doing as far as a COLA or market adjustment, and then merit or pay for performance. So in reviewing this whole thing, we're very comparable to the rest of the cities that surround us. McGrath had recommended to look at the CPI index, which is the consumer price index, and to keep up the tables with the market. The market right now is a 3.9%. So 2.18 COLA is great. It's not 100% there, but it's very, very close to getting us to that CPI to increase to keep up with the inflation that's happening. Last year we did a 2.97 COLA. This year we're doing a 2.18% COLA with a 0% to 4% merit. And I'm going to highlight that merit part because we are focusing on accountability this year. The employee evaluations that we set up with the new software system that is amazing, we are making sure that a merit increase is tied to their actual performance, their performance review.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How is that communicated to the employee after they receive a raise and their merit evaluation? Both those that receive it and those that don't? And
Yeah.
how is that received?
So it shouldn't be a surprise, and we train on that every single year. Employees should know where they're gonna land by the end of the year, because we don't wanna surprise employees, and we don't wanna give them expectations that where they are is not the same as what has been presented to them. So usually, employees know how they're doing because they've been having quarterly or one-on-one meetings throughout the year. And then when they are presented with their review, the director or supervisor will sit down with that employee and kind of go over their employee review to kind of walk them through and make it a coaching experience. It shouldn't be punitive. It shouldn't be like we are like hurting you for any reason, but we should be having those coaching and communication things so that we understand, that you understand, the employee understands where they are, as well as the director and supervisor.
And
So,
where they can go in the future?
yep.
And so that's communicated to them in a one-on-one meeting?
It is. Yep. They should be having one-on-one meetings. I know it's different for different departments and divisions. So we'd have to get input from each department director on how that's occurring. But for the employee process, it is a one-on-one meeting to go over their annual review. So that is a one-on-one meeting that they do get dedicated time.
Thank you.
This includes, and the tentative budget for this year, we have a 3.35 million for COLA and pay for performance adjustments, which includes the 2.18% COLA and a budgeted 3% for pay for performance. Don't get confused on that 3% though, because we are going to curve. So based on the department that you fall in, whatever your performance score is, you will end up in like a bell curve, a distribution of where you will fall as far as what percentage you'll get for your merit. This is a true pay for performance plan. I'm excited that we have it. I think high performers want to see it, and low performers need that boost to see that they aren't meeting expectations, so that we are clear and we are transparent on how they are doing. So I'm really excited for that this year, and it closes this week. So division directors and department directors, just remember that. Medical insurance changes are no changes this year. The only change that is actually happening is the embedded HSA for an individual deductible. That will increase from 3,300 to 3,400 per IRS regulations. I want to highlight that one for a moment because some HSA plans don't have that embedded and they have to reach the full deductible. So our plan is pretty rich that we have that involved as well. We received an overall 6% increase, but the city will pick those up, will pick that percentage up. And fiscal year 27 the city will cost $638,150. And all of our other benefits are remaining the same, which is great. URS changes that are happening this year are pretty minimal. We have a rate decrease for our tier 2 hybrid. The employee required pickup is increasing from 0.81% to 1.3%. No employer pickup option is available. That went to legislation a few years ago, and it was not passed. So the employee is the only one that can pay that. The employer can't pick that up still. So employer contribution rates have remained pretty flat or steady. We have small fluctuations each year. Staffing changes for this year.
Can I interrupt? Before we move beyond the benefits package?
Yeah.
So you, in a couple of slides earlier, you showed a comparison of some surrounding areas.
Yeah.
COLA and merit increases and that sort of thing. Are we able to dig into and understand what kind of benefits packages are also being provided and whether there's any employee required contribution? We know that our medical benefit is significant portion of our compensation package, and we aren't asking for any contribution from our employees.
Right.
Do we compare ourselves to other communities like you're doing here with COLA and merit stuff? Because that's a real cost.
Right. And we do compare. There is an online software that we can use for all of the city agencies to kind of put in their information. But we're pretty comparable. It's around 24%. and most agencies around this area and the Wasatch Comp Group, who we usually compare with, are very similar to that. So it's a similar plan. It's just like those details and those minute changes are different depending on what agency that you're with, but it's very comparable.
Yeah, are you aware of, or has Ogden City had any conversation around, medical costs are becoming a significant portion. We're gonna ask our employees to contribute. So if you're, beyond the deductible, so they're participating in the premium payment of $100 a month or anything like that.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. Justin, do you have any insight with that this year? No. We just kept the plan the same. That was the decision, but I don't think there was any need for it this year. However, if an increase came back that was significantly higher than 6%, we might have to revisit that and adjust at that point.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see. So we talked about the pay for performance distribution. We talked about URS, the small changes, staffing changes that are going to happen this year. We have some renaming, some transferred positions that are going to be organizationally changed to different areas, new positions, eliminated positions, reclassified positions, and title changes. And that results in 698 total full-time employee positions. And then we will still keep those 5 police officers and 5 firefighters as a floating. So they're not budgeted positions, but we include them as a placeholder. The staffing changes and transfers are all listed here. I'm not sure if you want me to go through all of them, but we have them all listed, and you guys can have a copy of these as well to see which ones are actually changes or transfers, and then retitle changes. Let me go down to the bottom. Eliminated ones are also listed on here, so the eliminated staffing changes and added. So that is all I have. Does anyone have any further questions?
You did good.
Thanks.
I do have one question. though.
Okay.
Early on, you were talking about seasonal is not as difficult to get now. A couple of years ago, maybe it was even last year, that was not the case.
Right.
And the strategy was that we're going to hire full-time people and then just try and keep moving around to where we need them. But that was going to cost us more money to do that. So as the strategy changed, then we're not going to do that anymore because we can get these seasonal folks.
I think the full-time positions are important because we train those and we have them and they have a steady like work plan that they've included. So I don't see us changing that. I think it's just good information to kind of review and understand is that seasonals we're not struggling as bad. I'm not saying that we aren't struggling, but everything's kind of getting better in the market is what it appears to be.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Allie?
Okay. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Allie. Appreciate it. Okay, the next item is Management Services Department. And now we have Lisa. You have 15 minutes also. No, I'm just kidding. Welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I apologize. I have a little bit of a cold. I am on an antibiotic. I don't think I'm contagious. I think it's a sinus infection, but if I do cough, I just apologize. I wanted to just spend a little time introducing you to what Management Services does. That's an interesting title and encompasses many things. Just looking at our mission statement, I look at us as kind of the backbone of the city or the engine of the city. We're the administrative side that keeps the frontline people working. I created an org chart based on activity. So this is a list of all the divisions under Management Services. And just to go through them really quick, under administration, you have me. I have a management analyst that helps look at and investigate opportunities and efficiencies for the city. And then we have an administrative assistant for the entire division. We just organized the parking and mobility fund. We have the, sorry, my eyes are bad. We have the fiscal operations division, which includes utility billing, treasury, and purchasing. We have the accounting and budgeting office. They do the accounting and budgeting, the financial reporting, internal controls. We have the, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Human resources. They also do the risk management for the city, which is all of the insurance, workers' comp claims, and they're involved in any lawsuit. Fleet and facilities. I tried to show. So when you talk about Ogden City, we have a multitude of funds. The general fund is our biggest fund, and that's generally where the activities of the city are accounted for, unless we are required by state law to have enterprise funds for our utilities. So that includes water, sewer, storm, and refuse. We also do an airport fund, a golf fund, parking and mobility fund, and we do a medical services fund. And then we have a couple of, they're kind of trust funds where we account for grants. It helps us account for the general fund activities separate from the grants. It allows for us to not include those up and down activities in the general fund. It just helps with the accounting. And then we have 3 internal service funds, fleet, facilities, and IT. Internal service funds are kind of unique, and the parking mobility fund is an enterprise fund that's run like a business. So are the internal service funds. They're run like a business, but their customers are other city funds. So when we account for IT, we're accounting for it in that internal service fund, but we're also billing and charging back to the general fund, to the water fund, to all of those other different funds who use that service. So on our books, we show really essentially those internal service funds twice. We show them in the fund themselves, and then we show them in the expenses for all of the activities they support. And I wanted to explain that. That's just a funky little thing government accounting has. And I have the pleasure of working with all 3 of those funds. And then we have the Justice Court and the Recorder's Office. I wanted to talk about some of the accomplishments that we have had this past year in management services. Every year we have several compliance audits we have a lot of sensitive data. If you think about the Justice Court and about our police department, we have several federal agencies who like to make sure we're following all of their policies. The Justice Court completed their compliance audits for several of those agencies this past year. Every year, we apply for and try to meet the criteria for receiving the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award and the Excellence in Financial Reporting Award through the General Government Finance Officers Association. What this does for us is it gives us a bar to try and reach. It's not an easy thing to do both of those. It takes a lot of effort from the staff to have all of the information required for both of those. So that's a big thing for us to get that every year. This past year, we've implemented a new employee evaluation process with a full PFP process that should have a bell curve for employee raises. And then I included keeping our insurance rate increased to 6%. Just hearing about what the market's doing in insurance, I felt like that was a good accomplishment. We went self-funded maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember exactly. And our intent was to see if we could buck the trend in insurance increases. This year when we met with our brokers, they indicated that they were seeing 20 and 30% increases in insurance rates. So we were very pleased that we've been able to keep that rate increase very low. We implemented the Ogden Serve app this past year. Additionally, we have a door hanger process for utilities when people are delinquent and about to have their water turned off. We've implemented a texting campaign to try and reduce that number of door hangers. I feel like this is a huge customer service issue. I hate it when I get a door hanger on my door. And so I always appreciate that text reminding me that I need to make a payment. We've been able to reduce that workload and the cost of doing those door hangers by 53%. We've spent a lot of time this past year modernizing the work order system. So there is a real-time hub where people can see the status of their equipment, whether it's out of service or in service, if it's being worked on or not. We did a big refresh of the amphitheater restrooms. If you get a chance, I'd go take a look. We did that with pretty much our staff just doing the work. We did use contractors for a couple of things, but they did a really good job for keeping the costs down on that. For collaboration, I just listed a big project that the recorders worked on with arts and cultural events, the 175th anniversary. The recorder's office spent a lot of time going through archives and helping them find records to celebrate that. And I know Tracy has spent a lot of time working with your staff on improving communications. This past year, maybe year and a half, they've really gotten it was something that we needed to do to comply with state law, and that was the 30 days, being able to turn minutes around in 30 days. So I'm really thrilled with the advances we've made there. We've made some changes to the homeless court at the Justice Court. And really what that did is tighten up the people who qualified to go in there. So it's a more effective homeless court for those people who can. And it facilitates also with housing, keeping them in housing. We did 71 formal solicitations. So those are bids asking people to do work for the city. That is a 33% increase over historical average, only 6% from last year, but if you look at a longer term, it's a 33% increase. We've migrated 1,200 devices from Windows 11, or excuse me, to Windows 11. We converted 146 iPads from one carrier to another with a savings of about $44,000. We've modernized the OPD devices that they use in their vehicles, saving both on the devices and the service about $19,000. And then we've consolidated the parks and recreation so that they can serve each other's customers. So it's more of a centralized cashiering system at parks and recreation. I've kind of redone some of these as well because I felt like they fell into multiple categories, so I'll skip those. We finished implementing the ClearGov interactive budget and CIP books this year. We have worked to strengthen compliance and reporting across all departments. That is an ongoing continuous improvement thing as well. And then we will continue to work to improve fleet and the customer service approach we have in fleet. We will continue to try and modernize our systems. And we are continuing to change our budget cycle with feedback from council and the desire of the administration to have more of a strategic alignment with our budgeting. And all of this is to build capacity, resiliency, and adaptability. This is kind of small, but the total budget for management services is about $38 million. That includes all of the interfunds. So again, those are budgeted twice. The budget for IT will show up in water, sewer, storm, as well as in the IT internal service funds. So those internal service funds are just unique in that way. I wanted to just talk about the cost savings and efficiencies we found in our budget this year. We went through and eliminated underused or redundant software. We eliminated two positions, and we went through and tried to allocate costs more correctly to other areas. And then we did also implement a couple of things that will add revenue to the city. Actually, one thing that will add revenue to the city, excuse me. Operational impact, we don't foresee any change to service levels. We do plan to, with the elimination of a collection specialist, we do plan to use a third-party collection agency after 90 days instead of trying to collect on past due accounts in-house. With some of the changes we made in eliminating the AP specialist and going to a third-party vendor provider and check writer, we have a $2 million coverage against fraud with that contract, so better protection for the city, and better vendor controls and compliance with that $2 million coverage as well, and improved transparency with trying to allocate costs to where they actually go. Instead of having all of the credit card fees in Treasury, we've allocated them out to the departments that generate those expenses. We're trying to do that with IT. We're trying to do that with facilities. It's a big job, so it's going to take us a few years to migrate all of those correctly. And then the estimated savings from the position elimination and the cost of the third-party vendor, we're saving $146,000. We eliminated $43,000 in software costs. And then we are implementing automated credit card payments through our bank. JP Morgan is the bank we use. And with that, we get a rebate on credit card usage, we're estimating, because we will be paying more vendors with credit cards, about a $30,000 increase to that. And then just based on activity, the Justice Court, we've increased the revenues $100,000. And then the cost adjustments and allocations, just the cost savings, truing up to what we're actually spending on security, banking fees, that was a savings about $82,000. Our positions, we are renaming the comptroller office to the accounting and budgeting office. We just feel like that's a better description of what they do. Most people don't know what a comptroller is. They think of the sprinkler, I think. Anyway, so that just better aligns that. We are moving 4 positions out of management services into the mayor's office. The marketing group will be moved under the mayor. And then we are taking 2 positions and reclassifying them. It will be an increase for both. We have a contract technician, and we have a purchasing technician, and we are combining those. So we will have 1 position, but we'll have 2 of them to help with better redundancy and coverage. And then we are eliminating 2 positions. We're eliminating the accounts payable clerk and a collections specialist. And then we are asking to add a new position. We're not asking for additional budget. We had some part-time money in IT that we weren't spending every year. This is a help desk person. We have a total of 5 help desk employees that cover all of the users in the city. That includes 24/7 operations. And we've just found that the staffing was challenging with 4, so we're asking for that 5th part-time, full-time person to be at the help desk. I wanted to just talk a little bit about one of the most expensive and challenging categories we have, and that's fleet replacement. Just based on years of replacement, this is not a finalized list. We'll need to work with the departments to make sure that we have it prioritized correctly. But we're estimating about 1.9. I think we have 2.2 budgeted, and so these are estimates. My sense is that once we go out and get costs and finalize these equipment purchases, we'll be closer to the 2.2 million, just because costs go up every year. But we are estimating replacing several things next year. The Oshkosh plows, those are actually just a portion. Those are grant funded. So if we can get the grant, they will pay for about 90%, and the city covers about 10% of those plows for the airport. We're also looking at one of the more expensive things on this list is another international. Those are what we use for our snow plows. We replaced 4 this year. I think we have a couple more on order, and we have 1 scheduled to be replaced next year. This was something that I haven't given all of the detail on every piece of equipment that's in this 10-year replacement, but I wanted to show you in general what this would look like. Again, there will be some tweaks as people prioritize and things break down faster or last longer than we anticipate. But as you can see, we try and stay right around that 2.2 million a year. It goes up and down sometimes. On average, I think we were about 2.1 annually. Again, this does not have the inflation built in. So these costs will go up. This is just based on replacement. I wanted to also just talk about how lease rates work. So I talked about how fleet is an internal service fund, and they bill everybody else to cover their costs. The way we do that for the majority of fleet is through a lease rate. So we look at the cost of, so just taking a Ford Escape, $30,000 today, in 5 years, $33,000, just applying a CPI. We do a 5-year life on a vehicle, and then we have an operating and maintenance rate. So that operating and maintenance rate will cover the employees, the mechanics that work on the vehicles, tires, oil changes, all of the maintenance on that vehicle, so that it is setting money aside that in 5 years we have the funding to go ahead and purchase a new vehicle, but we're also covering the operating costs as we go. And those are set up in every department and every fund of the city. So when you think of an ambulance, $1 million ambulance, that's a pretty big ticket item annually to do. I think we do we do 15-year on, pumpers? I'm thinking pumpers, 10 years on pumpers, on the big pumper trunks. In the CIPs, we have only 2 CIPs that we're requesting funding for. One is our general facilities CIP, and I'll show you the list of all of the buildings we maintain in just a moment. But we are asking for $1.5 million this next year, and I have a list of everything we've planned to do with that. $40,000 is coming from golf. We've also got a CIP for the Union Station, and this is the building itself, as well as all of the mechanical stuff inside the building. We have $2.5 million set aside right now to be appropriated to a CIP. It was fund balance from prior years that was set aside. We're asking to appropriate that. It will be matched with a federal money. This is Crossroads of the West grant. We have $3.6 million available from federal money. We would like to make sure we can get that federal money released. Right now, we're doing a LiDAR scan to make sure we understand that building very well before we start planning on what we'll do. And we only want to start spending when we know we'll get that match so that we can maximize the amount we're going to get. We will be working with CED and engineering on that. That is not a solo project for facilities. It's just too big of a project, and with the historical preservation, we need CED's expertise on that as well. This is the complete list of all of the CIP facilities requests we have. We have a huge list for every building with all of the mechanical. We roll it forward every year. We ask for funding. Most of the time we don't get everything we ask for, but we do the best we can. And then we try and plan. One of the big things we've been working on are the generators. We've been asking for $150,000 a year for generators. We'll ask for that every year until we have enough to replace the generators. I think the one that we're going to start doing over at Public Works is going to be about $400,000 because we're going to try and add more outlets to that generator so that if the power goes down, we have more electricity, more sustainability for operations. Since that was built, we do so many things electronically. It's important for us to have that capacity. This is in the CIP book. You're welcome to review it. We've got a list like this for the next 5 years of all of the facilities improvements we've planned for. And then this is a complete list of all of the buildings that we maintain. The ones that have the asterisks by the side are the ones that are part of the general allocation, so the non-departmental facilities costs. I'm going to talk about those in just a minute. Those are allocated between the general fund and the other funds that use those buildings. So over at the Public Works compound, it's not a compound, it's the fenced yard, Public Works yard. There are multiple buildings that go all the way around that, and they each serve a different purpose. And so we actually account for those costs in our work order system and allocate them between the general fund and sewer, the general fund and water, just depending on who is utilizing those buildings. The airport pretty much pays for its own. That's what we call, it's not on the asterisk because that's what we call a direct bill. It has a different way of being paid for. It's not part of the allocated cost. The fire stations, very similar. They pay their own utilities, do a lot of their own stuff. And so when facilities does work for them, it is directly billed to that entity. The parking structures over at the junction, those are under an agreement with Boyer PRI and the Redevelopment Agency. I'll pay CAM fees into that. That's how that's covered. When the RDA expires in a couple of years, we will have some decisions we'll need to make on those towers to continue to pay for the city's portion of that. Marshall White Center, again, is a direct bill. If you look at the Marshall White Center budget, the Marshall White Center itself is in that budget. It's a direct bill. Union Station is the same. And then all of the items with asterisks, as I said, are part of the allocation that is accounted for in the non-departmental budget. And then the Wonder Block will be paid for through the Parking and Mobility Fund. The non-departmental facilities budget is $1.8 million, and that sounds like a huge price tag. So I wanted to break down a little bit what that is for. That is not all of our facility cost. That is the portion that covers the Muni Building, the Justice Court, the Franklin Public Safety Building, Golden Hours Community Services, the Public Works Yard, and the Mound Fort Community Building that is attributable to the general fund. It also covers the wages for the employees. There are 4 maintenance techs, an administrative assistant, and then we split the fleet and facilities manager and deputy between fleet and facilities. That allocated cost basically covers utilities, water, sewer, refuse, storm, electrical, the janitorial costs, which would include window washing, snow removal, elevator inspection maintenance, general repairs and maintenance, and fire inspections. So it's covering the operations of the facilities. We do not have a sinking fund. We ask for funding each year through the CIP process. And then I wanted to talk about the non-departmental IT costs and what's included there. Again, we allocate the IT costs to every fund in the city based on number of users. And then we try to allocate their direct software costs. For example, water uses Neptune water meters, and they have a software that helps with the billing. The cost of that software is charged directly to water because that is who should pay for it. So in non-departmental, what we've included in non-departmental are the wages and benefits of the 18 full-time employees if the one we've asked for is approved. We have 4 to 5 part-time, depending on how staffed we are. And that wage amount is 2.5 million. So that's all comes through non-departmental, and then we allocate the wages to the other funds as well. So that's split between the general fund, water, and all of the other funds that are on our books. And then we charge citywide software and licensing costs there. These are allocated, again, not direct charge, but allocated based on our list of contracts, knowing what's coming due. And then we allocate based on number of users to the general fund, to water, sewer, storm, refuse, medical services. Those include Microsoft licenses, the firewall, alarm systems, both fire and security phone lines, Tyler, the ERP system. And then we have department costs that are IT related. Those are only the software and licensing costs. So police has a line item that's pretty hefty. That's just for their software and licensing. The wages are allocated through the non-departmental allocation. Again, this is something that we would like to work on so that it's better allocated to each department. But it's a big project, so it's just going to take us a couple of years to get there completely. Put everyone to sleep yet. I wanted to just talk about some of our big goals coming up. One of the things we'd like to do is implement utility access. We have been working on this for about a year. We've run into several bugs that we're working through, but this should provide real-time data to people. It's an electronic read between a meter and our system that can update people. I don't know what the timing would be. As we get closer, we will actually give you an information item, and we'd like to do a presentation for you on what it looks like. But that's something that we are for sure getting done this year. I'm looking at Brandy because she's helping me do it. We would like to continue to enhance Ogden Serve. If you have ideas or suggestions for things that we should be addressing through that app, please let us know. We would like to continue making forms and doing business available remotely. The need to go from building to building is old, and we like to eliminate as many of those processes as we can. We will be working on a new employee training module, and with that, we'd like to work on a supervisor boot camp to help better prepare employees for leadership roles in the city. Excuse me. We have a new IT manager. He started today, and I'm really excited to work with him on life cycle planning and governance of our IT costs. That's been an accelerating cost for the city, and I think we can do a better job of controlling that. We're also going to work with facilities and each department on the different ways we charge buildings out. I want to have real solid service level agreements in place with each of them. So their responsibilities and our responsibilities are well outlined. And then we will continue to work on advanced scheduling and maintenance for our fleet. So it's more of a, you can schedule ahead and come in for an oil change instead of us, the wait times that we've had. So greater efficiency there. So I hope I've given you a good overview of what management services does. I feel like maybe I've raised more questions than I've answered, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Lisa? Good presentation. I thought it was good.
Yeah, Chair, if I can just, a couple things. So first of all, thank you. There's a lot to this for sure. I appreciate the 10-year estimate on fleet. I think those are the kinds of things that we like to see as part of a financial plan. It's just kind of where are we headed and where are we going? And I wondered on the facility, the CIPs, you know, I think there are times, you know, when we have that ability to make those projects move forward. Are these prioritized in any way where if we weren't able to do any of those, do you have a preference list, or just curious kind of how that?
We did not. We actually tried to consolidate several CIPs into fleet and facilities. Golden Hours has kind of always done one of their own, and a couple of others have done their own. So we're trying to pull that together so that if we ask for 1.5 and we only get $1 million, we can sit down and prioritize. Some of it's cosmetic, so I think we would naturally prioritize anything that really speaks to the condition of the equipment.
And I see the Lindquist Stadium on there. I think that's good to see improvements being done there. I don't know how that relates with the relationship with the Raptors, if that's a shared cost, or is that something that we view as city only? Or
Yeah, unfortunately, our agreement with the Raptors is we are paid $100,000 a year, and we pay the utilities and most of the maintenance on that.
I think there's been like times where it seems like sound upgrades and other things. Is that all the city, or does it?
Yeah, it's pretty much, we did get a, when we did the lighting upgrade, we did get a donation from them to help with some of those costs, but the majority of that has been the city. Just the electrical and the people maintaining that facility, it costs more than we make.
Mm-hmm. And then just lastly, I appreciate seeing the goals going forward. I think those are good ideals, and certainly a compliment on that. So.
With the Raptors field,
Mhm.
have we got any kind of brainstorming going on to figure out how to use that more broadly?
I do know there have been conversations. I'm just not sure what I should say. I can make sure that we put that on an
Yeah,
update
I
list
don't
for
have
you.
any ideas. I just wish we could. Same with
Yeah.
with rodeo grounds. I mean, those things are
Expensive
they're
for,
a lot of money for short little blasts. And
thank you, Taylor.
that one doesn't work.
Side of the broken one, my apologies. What we're looking at, that's a great question, is not only how do we better utilize not just the Raptor Stadium, but other assets that we have in our downtown. And so we're in the middle of an evaluation process of how do we get more events, bring more people, have more stuff here, and then what are they, where do they go, and what's the best avenue for them. So one of those areas that we are talking about is Lindquist Field, and what can we do and can we use more of. I know it's been always exciting to have baseball games, but you're right, there's a lot of other opportunities that could go there. And so we're trying to talk to different groups about what some of those options could be and what we have. But as Lisa mentioned, we have to do that in coordination with the group that we currently have a contract with, and that looks to expire next year.
Thanks, Taylor.
Taylor, while you're here, in that contract negotiation, is those things you're looking to enter into a new contract where we will have more ability to utilize the facility and more, I guess, wiggle room in that contract to where the city can utilize it more frequently?
No, that's a great question. What we're trying to look at is if we were to put out an RFP, what's our best return with that asset? How can we get it the most utilized? The hard part is, I think the question that I know you and I both had, if we've had kids that have played there, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been great to have like the high school all-star game and other events that have been able to utilize that facility. I know in doing something, that's an item that would be important to us to continue to have community events and other items that can otherwise support the community. But I don't know specifically if we're going to still be able to have baseball games and other stuff there if we're utilizing it probably the way we should be. So, but I don't have a definitive answer on that. I just know that, let's say that we come back and we RFP it and we get a really good offer from someone that they want to take it and manage it, that changes everything. We haven't had any of those conversations, so everything's purely speculation at this point, and we get a guess, but my guess is always the highest and best use, and I'm going to think high, but as we talked about, like in our last meeting, my crystal ball's as good as your guys' is. Not great.
Another question I had was about the Tyler utility access. I think we've been talking about that for, seems like
5 years.
a long time.
It feels like it's been a long time.
And it seemed like the issue was everybody's not changed over to the different meter.
I know they've made a lot of progress. I do think we still have some gaps, but not like we had in the past. So we're hopeful we'll be much more successful moving forward.
Do you have an idea how robust that access will be?
I know that you can set alerts, but I have not played with it myself.
I'm just gonna speak for my wife for a minute. She gets a little frustrated when she's interacting with the utility billing
Mhm.
and thinks it ought to do stuff it does not do.
Okay,
And I guess I should have her call you, but
I can get her in touch with the right
okay.
person.
that-
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
those are the kind of things. I was wondering if this whole thing was gonna be kind of an integrated
Yeah.
thing.
It is going to be integrated. It's going to be integrated with billing too, which I think is helpful. And when we are a little bit closer, we do want to come give you a presentation on what that would
That'd be
look like.
great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Lisa, I have another question too. It's the Union Station CIP fund.
Mhm.
I didn't exactly hear to my satisfaction, what that funding is gonna be. It's 6.2
Yeah,
million or something. And
It's a lot.
is it simply just an overview of what the preparation is of a potential remodel in the future? Or is there some funding that's gonna be?
So
used with that?
this would be set aside specifically for the station itself. With Crossroads of the West, we're limited on what we could do. So foundation improvements, a new boiler, HVAC system, those are all going to be pretty expensive. Taylor has been working with GSBS. Is that who we've had
Thank
do
you
the
for letting
LiDAR?
me share that with you. I appreciate it. What we're doing is, the facility is old and historic, and that's the good thing and the bad thing. The good thing is we have a lot to work with and a great asset that we want to improve. So what we did is we hired GSBS to come in, and they're doing a LiDAR scan of the entire building. And in doing so, what we wanted to look at, and we want to take a couple parameters in mind of what rooms do we have, and then how can we best upgrade the system that's there, or do we bring in a new system totally, meaning all of our mechanical, engineering, plumbing items like that for what future uses could be. Now, we're not looking at, a massive change in future uses. We're looking at how do we turn it back into a transportation hub, and how do we get more people through the station itself. That's the desire of at least the mayor right now, and in his pushes is what do we do and how do we bring that back in. So there's some internal stuff that would need to happen to what we're looking at right now in the grand lobby. So improvements that could be made to the tile floor. We're also looking at doing some structural evaluations, and then that goes along with the internal LiDAR scanning that we'd be doing. And so just those, not just the studies, but those and some of the improvements start to get rather expensive. And then we also have some water issues that would be some landscape drains and some other stuff, not landscape, foundation drains and other items that would have to go outside of the building. That we would start putting some of those improvements in place. And we have other electrical improvements and everything else. So we have, Jared Johnson's behind me over my shoulder, and he and his group have been working on a lot of this stuff. putting a lot of these items in place, trying to make sure that we can take those next appropriate steps. Because what we don't want is to come to you with a 6.1 million and then you say, what did you do with it? And we go, we're putting a plan in place saying that everything that we're going to use these funds for will go to the benefit, the benefit and the preservation of the station itself. And that's been our goal of what we're trying to do is everything we can to try and preserve it and bring it back so that we can have more people using it, get more people through the station than we have probably in years past. So that's the best part is that's what we look at is the station was where people were welcome to Ogden such a long time ago, and we'd love that opportunity again. We'd love to bring people back through the doors of Union Station as probably one of their first stops and their first visit back to the city itself. And so it worked great early in this city, made Ogden an amazing place to be. Seems like I can't think of any better place to start that again.
Thank you. Okay, anything else?
I have one more.
Yes.
So I was just curious if you could speak to the decision-making around moving marketing and communications and digital media from management services to the mayor's office. What was the
Yeah,
thought process there?
even when marketing was in management services, they were kind of dually managed. It just works better coming from the very top instead of mid-level. I don't have a better explanation than that.
Okay, I think, well, thank you for that. I think, I guess the question might be from the public is how do we maintain, clear trust that taxpayer-funded city communication doesn't blur lines with electoral politics, regardless of who's the mayor, and what kind of guidelines are in place for
Yeah,
that?
that's a good question and probably something we need to get back to you with.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay, next item is Community and Economic Development Department. We have Mr. Jared Johnson with us today. So you got two items, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, look at the clock. 5:45 is what you get, so. I just, and I'm to blame here. I ask you most of the questions, so I'm gonna keep my mouth shut today. So.
You got till 6 o'clock for the RDAs.
Oh, okay, yep, all right.
Well, let's see what we can do. I work with an absolute great team. And when I asked them for information as we were starting to put all this stuff together, I had such a huge, massive amount that this presentation was monstrous. And we have worked really, really hard to peel it back. Hopefully we didn't kind of peel it back too much, but we've pulled a lot of things out of here. And a lot of that team is here with me tonight, which I really appreciate because they are phenomenal. So community and economic development is made up of several different divisions. A lot of times when people hear or think about CED, they just kind of focus and look at the economic development portion of that. But we actually have CED administration, we have the airport, we have building services, which is permitting, inspections, and licensing, cultural services, which is our arts and events team, and the museums and Union Station. We have economic development that also oversees and assists with the redevelopment agency, and then the small business development office. Those functions that we work with in there, we have neighborhood development, and we have planning. So we have actually a pretty diverse group, and I love it. I really do. It's really fun, keeps me on my toes, and I jump from the most extremes to some other extremes on some days. And so it's a good thing I've got a great team to work with. Kind of going through here on our budgeting priorities summary, we'll kind of go through some of these items and we'll hit on those, but consistent with what you heard the mayor say for the FY27 priorities, our budget does go through and support the no proposed tax increase, maintaining our core services, strategic staffing reductions and restructuring, which we'll go through each one of those, and supporting our economic competitiveness. So our first group that we'll kind of go through, which is interesting because in the budgeting world, Most of CED is general fund, with the exception of the airport. It is an enterprise fund that does act just a little bit different. Some of the some of the things that they've done in this last year, most of you are well aware of the terminal. It is amazing. Every week, we still get passengers coming and going saying how much they really appreciate what we've done out there and how it contributes to their traveling. And I think probably the biggest thing most people like is they don't have to pick up their bags outside. And if it's raining or snowing or whatever, with the inside baggage claim, and then redoing those bathrooms downstairs was huge. We still hear a lot about that and what's going on there. But we did save the movie memorabilia. If you're out there and you haven't seen it, let us know. We'll show you where we kind of put that. But with the several movies that have been filmed out there with Halloween 6 and Con Air and a couple of other things that actually have been filmed at our airport, we've kept some of that memorabilia and put it in its own special little place for the public to see.
Before you leave that one, I think we were hoping that new terminal expansion and facelift would kind of help us with some more routes. Any news about anything?
I wish I had some news to share with you that we had some big announcements coming up. Unfortunately, we don't. I can tell you we do have some very, very productive discussions that are happening with several other airlines, including the one that is operating out of there today. Has been expressed interest in looking at some additional routes and some of those items. With some of the national things that are happening, it has not helped that. Right. A lot of the airlines that were looking for potential expansion opportunities when Spirit went under quickly tried to backfill those markets quickly. So a lot of that got diverted into those areas. And then the other biggest thing right now that's hurting us is just the cost of jet fuel. Yeah. It is just skyrocketing. And so that's kind of blowing some things down as well. Thanks.
Keep on it.
We'll keep pushing. So on the operations and some of the things that are happening out there. So like I said, I'm at the end of this, I actually missed one slide in here I needed to put in where the airport actually acts as its own enterprise fund. The request that originally came in, we were $1 million kind of out of whack on where we needed to be. Working with the airport director and kind of going through those, we actually went through and eliminated quite a few of the asks and requests that they had and tried to find other opportunities. Also looking at working together with like public services on some of the equipment that they have for pavement maintenance, mastic machines and some of those other things, trying to look at consolidating some of those resources and working together to try to save some of those costs instead of outright trying to buy all of the equipment in one fell swoop to do that. Also looking at getting paint quotes for some of the requirements and things that we have and working through vendors to help us fulfill that until we can kind of improve a few things out there. So our operational challenges do continue out there, but we are improving. We have been working diligently this last year with airport tenants. We have a small advisory group that has been helping us try to work on the airport policy documents. And we've made some tremendous progress. They're also reviewing and helping us look at the rates, fees, and charges, which we're very, very close to bringing to you as well. But working together about making sure that we are fulfilling their needs and what they need to operate, but also increasing the needs at the airport. The airport has had decades of deferred maintenance, and it's showing up in a lot of areas. And we're finding creative ways to overcome some of those challenges and maintain and continue to work with all the parties that we do. We also anticipate in this next year that we would be fully. So if you recall, the old airport advisory board used to have a sunset clause in it. We brought that before the city council when we removed the sunset clause and made it a permanent board. All of that has been happening with all of the other items that have been taking place, and so we've not actually filled the seats yet for the airport advisory board. We actually intend to do that here in this next year. But have been working with a select group of businesses and hangar owners out there, kind of coming up with some of the policy stuff to where we're getting, and it's been a great relationship. So we really do appreciate that. We've also been able to capture some discretionary funding this last year, not all entitlement funding. So when other airports that already have dedicated funding are not able to meet their obligations, or if the FAA receives for a larger funding than they anticipated, they can hand that out in discretionary funding. That is awesome, but it's also a challenge. And what you'll see, what happens in that, like it did this last year, when the FAA called us and they said, we have $4 million available. Do you have a project that's ready to go right now? And we did. But when you take that money, you also have to have a match for it, right? And because we have no idea that that money is coming, we oftentimes then need to come back to the council and say, hey, we have this opportunity, but we've got to provide our match money.
Is it 1 for 1, or do they use, it's not 50-50 though?
No. So it's usually, so this last year, we've been having to do 5%. Traditionally, we say 10%, it's really like 9.67, but typically it's about a 10%.
Can I ask you about your airport advisory committee? In the past, we've had the members of that committee tend to all be, let's say, customers of the airport, and created some interest, because they almost always had a conflict of interest. And so we had some discussion years ago about the composition of that board, making sure that we had, other smart people that were knowledgeable about that kind of stuff, but that didn't have a stake in the airport. How have we tried to fill that?
So I think
committee?
we did make some slight modifications were made in the past. I think that's a discussion that we still need to have. So basically the core principles are still there in the sense that basically says there has to be so many individuals that are residents of Ogden, and there has to be a business owner. There needs to be, can't remember if it's an architect or an engineer, but we kind of go through and those, once we get outside the threshold of those that have to be residents of Ogden, then they have to be a resident of Weber County and or Davis County. We still have some of those provisions in there. I think that is still a discussion that we should still have. Do we still have the right balance? Do we need to go a little bit more heavy with representation of Ogden residents?
Well, that's kind of why I bring it up. I think it does deserve some more discussion. So,
and I would agree.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
We are not anticipating or asking for any changes in the staffing out there this year. However, I do foresee that is something we're going to need to tackle in the future. We have 5 full-time people right now that are running a 24/7 operation. The airport never closes. When it snows, we have 30 minutes. We have 30 minutes to get the runway open. And so it's a challenge. We've had great support from other departments that have been willing to send out personnel and help us in those type of instances and stuff. But right now, especially we have flights now on weekends, it is difficult trying to staff that airport at all times. So that is a discussion that we are anticipating we'll need to have in this next year. The other thing that we're working on out there, and we did it a little bit this year, we'll continue to fine tune it for transparency and for questions that we get a lot from the airport community is we're working on taking the budget of the airport and separating it into 3 sections, which is the operations, the commercial, and then the capital improvements, so that we can see where the money is going, what it's getting spent on. A lot of times what we'll hear is concerns from the local tenants that a lot of the funding is going for commercial. And we want to be able to show that that's not necessarily the case, but we also need to help clarify in people's minds. So we are guaranteed $1.3 million every year in entitlements, as long as we hit our employment numbers. That number goes specifically back into capital. It doesn't go into the operations, it goes into the capital. but it still is paying for large improvements at the airport. And so what does that look like moving forward? And then, like I said, on the additional policies and updates, there should be some pretty big movement here pretty quick on quite a few of those items. So we've been meeting regularly and have a really great group assembled out there. It's been very positive, a lot of good compromise working together, and everybody generally is feeling pretty positive where things are going right now. In our building services division, this is our business licensing, building permitting, inspection, and plan review, like we talked about. Just some of the challenges that they're kind of going through. I won't go through and identify every single one of these items. The opportunities is really where we're trying to focus. We are working to expand our online applications and the inspection scheduling. Some of that has had some software limitations with the software that we have. We have been talking with them about additions and things that we can do differently there. They've been very receptive to that, trying to build those in a different way so that we can communicate with our customers better. And what does that look like? We've actually been kind of restructuring as well, the staff and some of the responsibilities and kind of who's doing what, to try to make sure that we are being more customer service oriented and assisting people get through their projects quicker and getting the questions answered when they're coming in and make sure that we're giving them the right answers. And then still continuing, and I anticipate that this is something that will go on for a little while, but continuing to streamline those processes. Some of the budget notes happening in building services. We did propose removing one inspector position. That inspector position was vacant. That still leaves us adequately staffed. Sat down with that group, talked with the division director, and we reviewed the number of inspections that we're performing, the number of permits getting issued. One of the big key factors that we watch all the time is how quickly are we responding when inspections are requested, how quickly are we responding. State law gives us 3 days. We have to be able to do that inspection within 3 days of the request. We are still pretty much hitting we don't usually always have a lot of bandwidth to do same day, but if you call in today and want it for tomorrow, that almost always happens. There are a few exceptions to that, but for the most part, that is happening. So we're meeting that timeline. And so we felt very comfortable with that. This division also is one that does generate positive revenue. And that does go into a restricted fund. So if we did have an issue where we needed temporary help for a set amount of time, we actually do have funding that we could bring that in and address that and handle that. Two of the big items also that are happening in there right now is we are going through and doing a fee study on our building permit fees and our business license fees. The last time the building permit fees were adjusted for the city was in 2014, and the business license fees have not been done since 2004. And so that is something that we are trying to tackle and go through right now. Another part of that we really need to be looking at as well on the business license portion of that is Title V in City Code is our business license ordinance, and it is quite dated as well, and probably is well overdue for an overhaul. So that is something we're looking at trying to figure out how to program that in. As you're well aware too, from a few of the last meetings lately, we did move code services out of CED, out of building services, over into the fire department. In our cultural services division, these guys are the heartbeat of our city. They keep the fun things going. And this is the group I probably owe the biggest apologies to, that I don't know if I streamlined too much of their stuff. Again, we were trying to consolidate when we started this. We had over 90 slides and we were like, yeah, that's not going to work. So we've tried to go through and kind of put things together. A lot of their accomplishments, they do amazing things and they do fun things. I really like it when I can kind of go get involved and get to tag along with them on a lot of their projects that they're going through. You'll see on the bottom on the right side, the Mercy car is complete. It's just waiting to come home. and we're super excited about that. There will be a little event in July, right, Christy? Where it will be coming home, and we're excited about that. It looks great, and I think the community will be excited to see it again. But a lot of positive things. Everything in this area is trending up, to our sales, to our attendance, the participation in all of the programs, the demands and the pushes for what these guys are doing. Everything is increasing, which has been difficult because we've thrown a curveball to this group for the last couple of years. We've been reorganizing. We did again this year, and we're just trying to continue to search to find the best efficiencies we can, and work within the means that we have. So some of the things happening in cultural services, we did eliminate 2 positions in here. One of them was the Union Station Operations Manager and our Guest Services position, getting consolidated. We took one of our positions over at the corner and moved it over to assist with the Union Station. And we took our amphitheater individual that was over that and kind of made them over both venues of being the Union Station and the amphitheater, and then occasionally also helping over at the Dumpke Arts Plaza. And in doing so, but we understood in doing that we needed to go through and make sure that they were staffed adequately underneath there. So we did eliminate some full-time positions, but we did ask to increase our part-time to make sure that we're still meeting the needs that we have. And I appreciate the Cultural Services Division going through and mapping out the year, kind of the events in a year calendar and what was going on. And we saw that there were times that we had some lows and then sometimes that we were really heavy, and created a structure where we felt like we could balance that out better. So appreciate their help on that. We are also going through and reviewing our special event costs and our fees, to go through and identify some of these events. What are they really costing us as a city versus what we're actually charging for them? And or that can go the other way as well, but making sure we have a really good balance there to try to meet everybody's needs. And then how can we work with partners as well to try to help us identify other opportunities to service this stuff without increasing the overall needs from the city.
Can I just make a comment
Yeah,
there?
you bet.
That I think we just need to applaud this group. I mean, the number of people that we bring to our downtown with all of these events is phenomenal. And, you know, I think we just continue to doing this. It's just so good for our city. I was curious about too, so I don't know how the Big Boy event, if that's something that we bring in, or is it just happen, you know, was it we're available and we have that opportunity to do that? And then also when Doc, was it right? Doc came in, that was kind of almost a last minute thing, I think, but like, are those things that we're actively pursuing to try and fill in, or is that, I mean, how do those come about, I guess?
So it's a combination of all, right? So we try to keep a really good pulse on activities and things that are coming with Big Boy, and Christy could probably speak to this a lot better than me. I think we kind of get a little bit of a leg up on that because I think they really like our venue. They like to come to Ogden. We have a good viewing platform for it. We can accommodate a lot of individuals. And so when UP is doing those, they kind of, because of the good work that our group has done, they kind of earmark us all the time that, hey, we're doing Ogden. And I think we should be proud of that, right? Because we've accommodated them and we've worked with them enough that they feel comfortable that, you know, that they can count on that. And so that's a applaud to the team for that. With Doc, that was an item when it was going around the nation. We were able to talk to them, and it was surprising the number of airports on that one that turned it down and didn't want it, kind of rejected it. So when it came to the Ogden airport, was here for the 3 days, and they sold out all 3 days, like months in advance, like instantly, like overnight, thousands of dollars for a 20-minute ride, right? Like crazy. That they talked about maybe coming back again this year, but then they changed their schedule we may see it again next year. So we try to get a good pulse on those opportunities and make sure that we keep ourselves in there for those chances when they're coming through.
Just an additional comment, if I could, please. It's been fun to be in the downtown area last Saturday with the opening of the farmer's market and the week before with the marathon. And I know those are events that are put on by other organizations, but the support they get from Ogden City is significant. Just seeing the firefighters there and the police and others that are there, those are fun events. It brings a lot of people to downtown Ogden. And anyway, I just feel like we need to point out the effort and time that our people put in to help and assist in making those events happen. Even though they're not necessarily sponsored by the city, they're heavily supported by the city to make them happen. So
Yeah.
anyway,
And thank you for that. We appreciate that. And I'll look to the ladies in the back because they have sleepless nights over that stuff. So they do a ton. And it is exciting. Neighborhood development. So you're going, who's neighborhood development? Neighborhood development, this is a proposed in this budget is changing community development's title to neighborhood development. That's why you're seeing that slide on there. And I'll kind of go through the reasons as to why, but our neighborhood development team, kind of some of their accomplishments, the same things that you see them do. In FY26 up to this point, which is almost over, you can just kind of see some of their projects right there. I think that the biggest change in this last year is kind of the bottom of that slide, the 15,000 linear feet of new sidewalk. And that's kind of different than some of the way that we've operated in the past. Not entirely, but that's also what's helping direct and guide some of this name change is how we're kind of restructuring and looking at our focus moving forward in that group. We've been really focused on certain programs and we're going to continue to participate in those programs, but we're also looking at ways overall that we can strengthen neighborhoods and how we can participate and go through that. And so that's part of why you're seeing that name change, the middle in there. So some of the challenges, as you know, in the past, they've been very successful in buying very dilapidated homes. Some of the more contaminated homes in the city that have been real struggles, and going in, cleaning those up, fixing them up, and then turn around and selling them as owner-occupied properties. That is something that we want to continue to focus on. However, we do realize and understand that our focus on that is going to be getting smaller in the sense that just the overall cost of housing nowadays is not allowing us to have quite as big as impact as we have in the past. And instead of being able to go through and do, 15 or 20 homes or something like that, we're getting limited, potentially down to 5. Or maybe a few more just because of the cost of trying to acquire these properties, even when they're in a dilapidated state. So it's something that we'll continue to move forward with, but it is a challenge. Also, the federal funding for a lot of these programs has kind of been pretty volatile lately. We've highly successful again this year in getting our funding, but it seems to be kind of a little bit more of a question mark. And so just something we got to keep an eye on. And go through. But kind of the opportunity section right there going through of stabilizing the neighborhoods by focusing on those items going through there. This is a big part of what I mentioned when I said we were changing the name of that division from community development to neighborhood development, trying to focus on the overall health and well-being of the neighborhood in general instead of just smaller sections of it.
Can I get you to drill down a little bit more on the change in focus a little bit, more specifically, what kinds of things at a more?
Yeah, so we're just participating in other things like some of the improvements at Lester Park, right? We took some of our CDBG funding and contributed that to the sidewalks and some of the work that was done in Lester Park. We're looking at how we can more focus on and contribute some of that funding, the federal funding that we receive to like sidewalks overall in all neighborhoods. Public Services has a great program, but it's limited. It can only go so far. And so by joining an effort with them, could we take it further? Could we do more every year? Could we try to make more of an impact? And then just looking and identifying, working specifically with the neighborhoods and looking at what their challenges are, whether that's sidewalks, whether it's lighting, whether it's failed infrastructure, what are those other things? And so including still focusing on the dwelling itself, but what are the other opportunities around that entire block can we also participate in to help strengthen those neighborhoods?
So let me say this. I think there's an opportunity. The council's been sponsoring these neighbor up grants for several years now. And these neighbors come together and they get hundreds sometimes of people coming to these neighborhood parties. And I well, like the one that was over this last, I think it was on Monday, the fire department showed up. And so that they could kind of let the kids in the neighborhood kind of interact with firemen and that kind of thing. But what makes me think this, the things you just mentioned, I think that would be an amenity or a feature that many people would love to include in their neighborhood party, is an information part that somebody from your office or an appropriate office might be able to interact with that kind of thing. And I wonder if there's some opportunity to negotiate how that might work.
Yeah, so it's actually in works right now. So we're working on that. A couple different ways that we're doing that. So when the mayor started holding his neighborhood meetings, right, we're attending those with them and we're speaking. A lot of my team is there and we're speaking with the residents as well. We're trying and working to identify the best way moving forward, how we can work collaboratively and what does that chain of communication look like, right? How does that neighborhood that has their very specific needs, how does that filter in to the city? And then how do we respond and react to that moving forward? And then the other portion of that, my mind's going faster than my mouth is at the moment. So trying to create that avenue for discussion, and then taking those needs and those priorities, and then figuring out the best ways to implement them and make them a reality.
This has an opportunity to change people's perspective of the role of the city. Some people we get the complaints. I mean, they come to council members. Why don't you guys do this better? Why don't you do that better? But the city does a lot of things really good, but people don't seem to notice. And I think this has an opportunity to help people see that city being proactive and really kind of flip that script. I think it's got some opportunity to really help in that way.
Yeah, the other thing that we've already started off right now that's happening every other Monday is we're having a neighborhood meeting, right? So we have the executive directors of all the different departments, and then we've included and invited a bunch of the nonprofits, United Way, and just a whole plethora of them. I don't want to sit there and try to name them all, but they're all coming around this table, right? And we're talking about what are the needs that we're seeing, what are the programs that you're doing, how do we work together to maximize that effort and strengthen it, have more of an impact. So all those preliminary discussions have already kicked off and are taking place right now.
Great.
So we're going to continue to refine and hone that process as we go through to try to make it as efficient as possible. But yeah, I think we're in this.
I really like the name change. I think that changes the way we think about it, and appreciate that. Thank you, Jared.
Just real quick, some of the budget notes on this one. We did eliminate 2 positions in this division. So we eliminated a program specialist position. It was vacant. And then we also eliminated the administrative assistant position in this division as well, and are assigning some of those general duties of the administrative assistant upstairs to the main CED administrative assistant to help with those. We are also proposing to create a new position that kind of falls in line between what was the admin and the program specialist, to be an assistant housing and program specialist in here. So you'll see that go through. And then we already kind of talked about the division change in there. Our economic development division, again, that's made up kind of 3 areas: economic development, redevelopment, and the small business development office. Currently, they've got some really good things going. We've had some pretty good recruiting trips. Lately, we've got 8 new or active projects that we are working through right now, trying to see if we can make any of those stick and if bring them here. Hopefully you guys were able to attend, but on May 14th, we had Beehive Mills out in Trackline. They've actually been out there for a while, but we were finally able to get to their grand opening, their ribbon cutting. Really, really excited about that one. Great company, great program. In their business sector, they're one of the leading in the nation, and it was really awesome to be able to pull them out of Davis County and bring them to Ogden. We're also utilizing this group in other capacities that we haven't in the past. Some of those are identified here, like with the airport restaurant recruitment project. So typically the airport would kind of do that in the past, but we're bringing in the professionals that kind of do a lot of stuff in that to assist them with those and realign that. We just went through an RFP proposal. We had the best response that I've seen for that area out there. So we'll be going through and hopefully get able to move that forward here pretty soon. We're also helping with the recruitment over at Wonderblock, have a weekly standing meeting, some of the things that are going on over there, continuing to do our BRE visits. And then on our small business support, we have done 3 new business loans and 2 loan modifications. This is always a really tough one. I think it's a needed resource, but it's also a difficult resource. These loans, when they come to us for a loan, are generally not the kindest loan in the world. And what I mean by that is they typically have very high interest rates. If they're coming to us for a loan, we're not trying to compete with the financial sector or those banks or anything. And so typically the individuals that are coming to us are not able to get a loan through any other resource. And so they kind of end up coming to us. And the hard part about those is when we assign those loans and they go out, they have very specific criteria. It's great in the essence that when we give the loan, we can use federal funds, CDBG funds, to support those loans. The catch side of it, though, is a little bit interesting in the sense that if they default, if they don't meet those criteria, and that has to be paid back, the city is responsible to pay that back. So we have to try to work with the individual, potentially, what does that look like? But the city is kind of on the hook to repay those. And so we have to be kind of careful with those, but we have had some pretty good successes. We're continuing to run our Elevate Ogden speaker series. We've had really good attendance on that. And then this group also has been challenged, and we changed them a little bit. We've actually relocated them to the 2nd floor of this building. If you remember, they used to be over at the MCAN facility over there, over at the BIC. And we relocated them here, and we actually have them assisting. So anytime a business comes in and it's a first-time business, it's not just an annual renewal, although they will help with those if needed as well. But if it's a brand new business coming through for the first time, we're engaging them with this group right out of the gate to kind of go through all the resources and the needs that are happening and to try to help facilitate a better and smoother process going through. So that is something that we'll continue to refine as well, but we're actually really excited about that opportunity. The redevelopment items they do, like I say, they also participate in that. We'll be talking about some RDA stuff a little bit later, but you can just see some of the items. The transparency dashboard is one that we're really interested in, keeping that going, and some of the other items there. We won't go through a lot more, but some of their challenges and opportunities they're facing with. One of the items that you see on there that's coming up right now, some information that's due very quickly, is opportunity zones. Those run on a 10-year cycle. Those are getting ready to expire. We've been notified of that. We've put together quite a bit of information that will be responding back on that. We have been told that statewide, the number of those zones will be reduced from what currently exists, and it's going to be a little bit more competitive. It is also our understanding that the governor's office kind of has very strategic locations that they want to place those in. So we're going to have to be pretty vocal and aggressive about pushing for the ones that we would like to see here. And we've done quite a bit of homework on that and are ready to make that proposal. So there are some really good things happening here. Some of the budget notes, some of the changes that are happening there, we did eliminate the redevelopment specialist position. As you recall, there was two positions. There was the redevelopment coordinator and then the redevelopment specialist. We are eliminating the redevelopment specialist. We did change the name from the BIC to the Small Business Development Office. And then a couple of things that have come up that we're looking into right now is ways that we could potentially help with emergency loan support for businesses that are impacted by construction or parking disruptions or some of the other things that are happening right now that are going through. We do have about $130,000 that's available in the ELF program, which is the Emergency Loan Fund. That money came into the city through private donations. So if we want to utilize that in that capacity, we need to make sure that we have the program written and identified for that. And then we also looked at some other funding that potentially could we put that into a holding fund as we work through the preliminary startup time frame of the managed parking. Could we provide validation to the businesses for a while as we work through some of those items? So we've got some ideas on some things that we're trying to work through in there. So wanted to mention it in here, but that would need further discussion and come back to you.
There you go. For the potential emergency loan fund, could we do it as a grant? Because if they are in an emergency, if this business is struggling, obviously they are not going to be willing to pay back if it's a loan because the business is struggling. Is there any way we can explore the idea to turn in a grant?
Yeah, I think we could. And I think that would be the further discussion that we'd want to come back with is that a grant or is it a loan? What does that look like? There's not a ton of money left in that. And then also I need to research and make sure we have a really good, clear understanding of when that money was given to the city from those private donors. Was there any specific criteria that has to go with it? And I don't know that right now, but those are things that we would want to go through and look at.
Will we get that information, like if it's a potential criteria we need to consider in that is
Yeah,
possible?
it's definitely something we're going to have to
Okay.
get moving on here pretty quick because
Okay.
we know the timing. So yes. Okay, in our planning division, man, these guys, they haven't really had a lot to do this last year. Barton's like looking at me like, are you crazy? No, these guys have been absolutely swamped, and I just appreciate the dedication of this team and the number of late night meetings and everything else that they've been doing through this last year. We are hopefully on the home stretch of what we're going through. So we've got complete Plan Ogden, hopefully coming by the latest of October. The Zone Ogden portion in December. We are trying to wrap up and getting the Wall Avenue study completed. This was one item that came up before, and it kind of crosses over a little bit with the RDA, but we are initiating the 5 points area study. That does it make sense, and is it possible to have that as an RDA area? We did get a grant to do that from Wasatch Front Regional Council. So we have kicked that off. There actually is there is movement on that. So we're excited on that. In this area, we are proposing to eliminate one full-time position, which was administrative assistant. So this division actually had two. And part of that came from when we had a long-term employee that was retiring, bringing somebody in to kind of sit with them. And then it kind of just remained. And so we're trying to go back in and clean that up.
Don't tease me with that 5 points RDA.
I'm not
I know.
teasing, it's starting.
Good. All right, thank you.
The study.
All right.
There'll be lots of communication with you about that, but we are, work is actively being done.
Good.
So on the budget notes on this, there is some proposals in there to moderately increase a couple of lines, but it also decreases other lines inside this budget that kind of makes that one flat overall. And then this division also has 3 temporary full-time positions that phase out. Those positions were brought on for Plan Ogden and Zone Ogden, and they phase out over the next few months. The first one I think is in July sometime, and then like October and November, I think, for the other 2. I don't recall the dates specifically, but those will just kind of phase out as those projects come to an end. Just kind of go through some of the summary in here. Again, just on our proposals, excuse me, for the strategic restructuring and the operational efficiencies that maintain our core services. Going through reducing our overall department budget, no proposed tax increase impacts, maintain our core services, continue our infrastructure investment, expand our housing and our neighborhood support through the methods that we talked about, and then continue to strengthen our economic competitiveness. So in the CED budget overall, with those positions and some of the other changes that we made from the previous year's budget, we reduced it by just over $500,000. There are a couple of increases in there. One of those, as you heard in the management services presentation, talking about some of those credit card fees and a couple of those IT costs. The credit card fees coming out of the treasurer's office and getting allocated correctly to the divisions that goes to 4 different areas in CED. But those costs overall, it's about $192,000. And then with the insurance increase and the wage increase, that's potentially $322,000. And then we did reduce, we transferred that $820,000 out of CED to code. There is one other item in here, and this would be in the CED administrative portion. The Union Station development position that we're still working through, that would mostly be funded from the Union Station Foundation. That would likely pay the wages. The city would likely still need to pick up the benefits portion of that. Okay, the CIP portion of it. This is a pretty big change from what you've seen in the past. One of the items that we wanted to note on here first, though, last year the council had ranked very highly the North Jackson infill CIP. I wanted to talk about what's going on with that. So we started down that process. We got the subdivision plat. We were working through that. Our neighborhood development team was doing a fantastic job, and we identified a potential opportunity. And so what we did is we RFP'd that project, and we got quite a few proposals on it. We RFP'd it with the criteria that it was the same subdivision plat that you guys had seen and approved, as well as the criteria for the homes themselves of having to meet certain standards and have certain design aspects built into them. And we got quite a few responses back, which was awesome. And so at this point in time, we're just trying to final that up, but we will not be moving forward with completing that project internally as a city. The property will be sold to a private contractor. They will be paying more for it than what the city paid for it when we purchased it. They will be responsible to install the infrastructure. And then the other, hopefully, that we're excited about on that is they could do it on a larger scale. Instead of us doing potentially 4, 5, 6 homes a year, they might be able to tackle all 30 at once. I mean, I don't know for sure yet, but the opportunity there to get that done.
Do you have a start time for them?
They are actually going through the processes right now for their final approvals. They're going through planning.
So you don't really have a contractor yet, or you do?
Well, we RFP'd it and it was awarded and they're just doing their final steps.
Okay,
And then
all
we'll
right.
actually close on the property and then they'll get started.
Oh,
And
good.
that's
So,
anticipated, Jeremy, is that July? This summer, yeah.
So thanks for the update on that. And just to be sure I heard what you said, we sold the property to the developer for more than what we paid for it. And rather than us picking up the cost of improving the infrastructure to that area, they're going to pick it up. Correct. Wonderful. Thank you.
and we still get the same quality dwellings and,
Yeah, so when we
Great.
did the RFP, we actually put all that design criteria in there. And the layout and the design criteria, how they had to, we kind of still tried to control some of that. And we were a little bit hesitant. We didn't know how that would be accepted, but it actually went really well.
and they're gonna do the pedestrian through over the canal, right? That
Yeah.
was part of the deal, right?
Yeah, we still
Okay.
have the pedestrian access to the west.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
The airport CIPs was a huge change, and so instead of going in, if you remember the old list, there was 12, 13 different CIPs on there. We actually went through and created 4 new categories. And those categories we went through was airport, landside access and parking, airport airfield service and support, airport airfield pavement and FAA AIP projects, and then airport terminal and passenger processing. We did this for a couple of different reasons, but I really am excited the way that this came together, that we could go through and identify and put those projects into those buckets. What was happening before is if we would have, of those 12 CIPs that would be on there, you might have 8 of them that were eligible for FAA funding. And so you'd have to put your match and then the grant amount. And so our entitlement funds of the 1.3, it didn't really work out this way, but it always looked like we were putting a lot of placeholders in there. This way, it kind of just puts our required match into one bucket, and then all the projects that are eligible for that entitlement funding are in there. And so it gives us the ability to kind of move with the FAA as they go through and define what's eligible, what they're going to approve, and our 10-year plan that we have to do with them. As we go through and we structure that, we could be fluid with the projects that they approve that year. Instead of having to come back and be like, okay, the CIP was this, but this is what got approved. So I'm actually really excited about it. And then our other one is the Dumpke Arts Plaza. So that portion, we can I'll go into this slide. That portion comes from the Adams CRA on that. But you can see in here, I only put the ones on here that we requested funding in. We have other CIPs, but these are the ones that we requested funding for this year, as well as there's other items, CIPs that you saw, again, with management services that they talked about. We have some needs and things that were at the amphitheater. We fully support the request for the increased funding that they have for the facilities, because we kind of package that into there. And then again, as you heard, working together as well as on Union Station. And so, we're kind of taking a team approach on a lot of these and really reorganize that list. And I think, in my opinion, it's a lot clearer than it was in the past. Any questions on those CIPs? Any questions? Okay, that's the big portion.
So now that questions is on the board, I'm going to just rewind to the North Jackson with a couple questions, just in the interest of understanding how things work. So at some point before I was on the council, the city council had to approve a budget that would allow the purchase of the North Jackson property. And while I was on council, we also, I think, had a budget opening where we said yes to some dollars that would improve infrastructure to that site. Now that the city has sold the property and we will no longer be investing that money that was budgeted for infrastructure, where does that go now? How does that cycle back and where does it land?
So that money will go back into the funds that were used to pay for it. So I want to say North Jackson was paid for out of Quality Neighborhoods. And so that money will then revert back into that fund.
Okay. And then is infrastructure, is that within Public Works?
Most of the infrastructure was being done through CIPs.
Okay.
And you want to talk about it? Yeah, what's up, Jeremy?
Thanks, Jeremy.
Sorry. So just real quick, just a couple things. There was a CIP for this project that was granted. It was, I think, $100,000 or less. So it was initially just there to get the project started. Most of those funds were used for the design and just some of the mild improvements there at geotech, all those type of things that you do when you do development. It was so that we could get that going. So those funds have been expended.
Right.
On that. As we did the RFP, we largely had that entitled to a position where we could sell it, just showing like, this is the project we were planning on doing. We put it into an RFP, saying if you guys can do it, somebody else can do it out there. You know, what does that look like? And if you buy the property, you develop and all those things. So those funds, with that CIP was just the kickoff to get going. We pretty much already expended those funds. The additional request was for the actual development that we've now saying we no longer need because that will be done privately. Does that answer your question about that?
I think so. So the money all flows back into the respective budgets that they came from, with the exception of
Yeah, so once you
that
sell the
initial
property,
investment in
Exactly.
the development.
yeah, so those were quality neighborhood funds from the BDO lease revenue side. And that it gets returned back into that quality neighborhood initiative funds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I had a question of a slide you slipped over rather quickly, and that was the Rumor Hotel. I didn't see the announcement of that until this past week. I think it kind of came out on social media. I didn't see it anywhere else. But that's pretty exciting.
It is exciting. We got a couple challenges we're still working through with that, but yes, Jay Fisher did go through and announce that they have selected and come to an agreement with a flag, which is Marriott, for one of their specialties, and this is one of them. That is the name that they have landed on for that. Kind of goes with Rumor Alley, right? That kind of flows through the Wonder Block itself. So they started announcing that and sending that out. So we kind of threw that in here, but there will be more to come on that.
Awesome. Thanks.
And while we've touched on that, the other big news was the sale of the former Freddie Myers property. And
Yeah.
What can you share with us about the intentions there? Anything?
I'd love to be able to share a lot more with you than what I can at this point. And the reason I say why I can, I have a meeting with them on Friday. We were not included
Right.
when that announcement went out. So we have had some discussions with some individuals in the past. The last big discussion we had was about 9 months ago. We haven't had anything recent. And when that name came out and that news article went out, it caught all of us off guard. My phone was going crazy and I was calling all my guys going, I think I should know about this. And they're all like, yeah, so should we. So we do have a meeting with that group on Friday to find out more. Kind of caught us all by surprise.
Yeah. Well, we can be hopeful anyway, huh?
So the discussions that we've had in the past with the different group, when I started kind of digging through and research, we did recognize a couple of the names. So we think they're still involved, and they have talked a lot about retail, but they, at the time, were really leaning pretty heavy on a mixed use with a lot of housing units in there. And so we talked through that and what does that look like and what would be allowed under the zoning. And hopefully we'll find out more this coming Friday
Great.
about what's taking place there. Thank you. Okay, for the RDA one, I will go through this. It's pretty short. We presented this 2 weeks ago, the overall budget, and so let me know any questions that you have. So we're going through the increment projections that are coming in on this. You can see there's a small increase to most areas with the exception of some that, like Flagship, was a single purpose at the time. And it will just remain stable the way it is. The biggest one that we had right there that was a surprise was the airport CRA in its first kind of collection year, capturing $2.5 million. Working with my team, I was like, wow, that's big. What's going on? The biggest leading contributing factor as to why that was such a big influx in its very first year was the fact that if you remember, that CRA, we locked it in at the 2020 rate, right? But then we didn't start doing collection until 2025. So you actually had a 5-year growth period in there that typically we don't have in those projects. And so that's why we're seeing a larger than normal capture rate in the first year on that one.
Can I ask, so do we anticipate that shortening the tip window for the ink? Right?
No, because it'll still be generated off of the, so that was the year it got locked in. That wasn't the year that it was deemed as it started. That one had a really weird hiccup when it kicked off. So it will not, it'll still be fine. So it'll still run its duration or if it meets its budget earlier than that. So
2028 or 2048 is the end of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Some of the notable transfers coming into the RDA budget. One of the big ones you'll see on there is the Union Station land purchase, $780,000. That is payment number 3 of 5. That is again paying for the land underneath the building when that was negotiated with Union Pacific. The 25th Street area, we are proposing to pay off. This will be the final payment on that. So this one will come off the books and no longer have to be tracked, which is awesome. The Continental area, $350,000 payment to Golden West for the loan that was taken out on the St. Anne Center. This is, we are expediting this and paying it off early and just being done with that one and getting it off the books as well. And then the others, as you see with Continental area with the Wonder Block on the bond payment on that, and then the housing fund for quality neighborhoods. Some of the transfers out, again, you can see the portions there that are committed to the housing fund. We're anticipating $1.5 million coming into the housing fund this year in the RDA, and then the portions that transfer over for the administration in the general fund. So those numbers that get transferred over actually pay the staff time for the city services that actually take care of the RDA in a dual role. Just want to talk about some of the things that are going on over there. Some of the different things that we're doing, as you're well aware, there's Wildcat Square CRA that has been being talked about. That's one that I would like to follow up with the board members and kind of go through on that one. That is very, very unique. It is different than most of the CRAs that we have done in the past. This is an opportunity to get non-taxable land as taxable for a set amount of time. So we'd kind of like to follow up on that one. We do have to make a decision on Union Station, on the HTRZ, the application and the kickoff on that one. And what does that look like? Also Capitol Square, we are trying to finalize and get to the point where trying to identify if the project is going to be able to move forward in the state that it has been proposed. The 5-point CRA, we kind of talked about that a little bit before, but it is moving forward with the grant that we received from Wasatch Front to do the initial study and identify the findings, which would then potentially lead us to the next step. That will come back before this group as well. 25th Street and the I-15 interchange, what does that look like? And the timing of that as all that stuff goes. I think the biggest one on here for me that I'm excited to continue with this board is the RDA policies and procedures. We've been meeting internally as a group, preparing stuff to get to the point that we can transmit them to talk to the board about. As you're well aware, the RDA policies currently in the city code are pretty short, and we feel that those could be strengthened and bolstered and we can add some more things to it, like the housing funds. What does that look like, and what should we be doing with those, as well as some other opportunities. And so we've been working on that and look forward to be bringing those to you within this next year. Pretty quick and short on the RDA. Any
Yeah.
questions on that one?
Any questions on the RDA for Jared? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
That's my time.
We're doing, yeah, you did close. Better than usual though, so this is really good. That was a big one. All right, next item on our agenda is general discussion. This is about concerning the tentative budget Schedule A changes. We've got both Justin Sorensen and Glenn Symes to talk about this, so who wants to start?
Turn on my microphone. So I will just start off briefly. So this shouldn't take long. Typically with the Schedule A amendments through the budget, they are what we call friendly amendments. So there are corrections or other things that we sort of agreed on that need to be updated. Some of the bigger council initiated or council directed changes tend to show up in the Schedule A1 with the final budget. So with the Schedule A changes, we do have a couple of changes that I will go over. So the first one is recognizing some ramp grant revenue, and then Justin, I don't know where he went. I think he dipped out. There he is. So if he has anything to add, he can update update you all after I am done. So we had some ramp grant revenue that needed to be recognized that wasn't included in the budget that was submitted. That's about $87,000 that needs to be recognized. So that will actually bump up the tentative budget total, that $87,000. And then the 1100 North Monroe traffic signal project. So we've talked a little bit about that one. That one in the community plan, it's listed as a roundabout. And because it's not consistent with the general plan, because the community plan is part of the general plan, we're going to pull that aside and put that into a contingency until that community plan can be updated, and then we'll move that back over. So that one is budget neutral because it's just moving it from that CIP to a contingency, a holding fund. That's $335,000. So those are the two changes we have as far as the Schedule A changes. If there's anything else that the council wants to address right now, we can certainly talk about that. Otherwise, as we go through our work sessions in June, then we can get into some of the final changes that you all would want to see with that Schedule A1.
So Glenn, that 1100 North Monroe, I mean, that was brought to our attention last year that it didn't comply.
Yep, it's been on the list for a while, but there's never been proposed funding for it. So it's always been in the capital improvement plan, and we've always had that note that hasn't been consistent. And so we've always said, yep, we understand that's not consistent. Once it gets funding, then we need to deal with that. And now we've got funding, so now we need to do it.
That is what my question really is, and I'm kind of looking over at Barton to see what kind of a time frame that correction to that community plan will happen. Is that something that's imminent? Is it what? Yeah. Okay. Good. This fall.
This fall.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Barton.
Okay. Any other changes that you all want to talk about right now as far as the Schedule A might go? So that's on your agenda next week for consideration with the tentative budget. Okay, if not, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Sure, that's all right.
Sure, go ahead. That would be information item concerning the Taylor School Canyon property purchase. And Jeremy Smith is here for that one, right? Did I skip something?
No, we had that corrected on the agenda. You must have done.
Oh,
The agenda does.
yes, okay.
Just FYI.
Oh, we just, we waxed our words, huh? We waxed our words. Mixed our words up. Okay. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thanks. So I'm here just to give an update on the Taylor Canyon property. This is something you're all familiar with because it came to you, I guess, back in December when the city acknowledged it with the intent to pursue purchase of this property. There's been a lot of negotiations since then. This is just, there's the aerial of where it's located. And just where, I'm gonna let you know where it's at today. So as of today, the school district delivered back a real estate purchase contract that the city brought to them a week or so ago, which they presented to their board of directors and received approval to move forward with. The deal that was negotiated was based on the appraised value of the property, and a portion of the property is proposed to be purchased by Ogden City with the intent of maintaining and sustaining the park area to the east. That's approximately 2.6 acres. And then the school district would retain the property to the west. Approximately, man, I cannot see that, 1.3. Okay, thank you. And they would retain that for possible sale for future development. So that ultimate price, this is all just approximate based on this aerial and the plat that we have here, but we will be having this surveyed for an exact square footage of the property, and then that price would increase or decrease based on the actual surveyed property. So the preliminary purchase price is $948,546, and then that will increase or decrease based on actual square footage. And then, so it's currently under contract as of today, and then the city council has an opportunity to approve the funding, of course, prior to the closing. But the actual closing won't happen until that survey's done and all the final pricing's done, and that'll be a bit. We're working right now with a engineer to get us that survey. So that is an update. Happy to entertain any questions that I'm able to answer.
Any questions for Jeremy about?
I have a question, Jeremy.
School.
Early on in the discussions about this piece of property here, it was mentioned that the intent to keep the whole property and to maintain it as open spaces possibly for the city. And this is quite a change from what we've originally seen. So how did that come about?
Oh, it's a great question. I think a lot of options were considered, and when the administration, school district looked at it, they wanted to find something that made sense, was a win for everybody involved in it. And this was based on budgeting and all sorts of usability questions. I think this was the consensus that was landed on.
What about the other properties that are park properties in that vicinity? Because just some talk, and it was not anything specific, but talk was that the evaluations would be done on usage of those other parks like Lions Park and I forgot the name of the other park, Thomas Park. They're all in my neighborhood, so it's not close to my neighborhood. But anyway, there's a lot of concern about that through that neighborhood, and so those usages will probably continue to be parks.
Yes, I don't think this impacts any type of, I've not heard anything about change of use of any of the other parks as a result of this transaction, no.
Very good, thank you.
Why don't you come on up, Taylor, and you can sit right here if you'd like. And
Sorry, just a point of clarification. Monty Stewart, I believe, for instance, on Thomas Park has some proposed improvements that will be coming. So there's no indication right now to eliminate any of the other parks in the area. We are looking to make improvements in some of those to help increase utilization, overall usage of the remaining sites. And so I think part of the proposal on this one too is we would see the utilization. And that's what we're trying to do, is make the best proposal that we could back to you as council members. and your decision with the budget on what we would like to do next.
I appreciate it bringing that up because one of the largest issues that I've heard about some of the other parks is the lack of parking at the Thomas Park and the Lions Park, and that there's congestion along the streets near those parks.
Yeah.
So that's something that you think may be in the master plan of replanning those parks as well?
Those are options we're definitely looking at. What we're trying to evaluate is how we're utilizing them on sports days. So I'll give a for instance, as we're looking at this one at Taylor Canyon, if council decides to move forward with an option like this, we would use it for practice days. And that will normally help out with parking and other related items so that we don't overpark some of the areas. I know that they were looking at Lions Park specifically to see what some of those other options could be, but I haven't seen a specific plan for parking and improvements, nor have I seen one for Thomas. But I know we have been looking at park improvements for like a new playground and other items at Thomas that we're trying to otherwise facilitate and take care of.
And, sorry, did you get all your questions? Good. Can you speak to specifically what the utilization of this park is foreseen to be? I know in the early discussions of this, there was discussion of a paradigm shift that happened in the administration where we could utilize larger parks and that would allow for more playable space. And so I think that's part of what would caught us off guard here as the parcels here looking to be split. So what went into that decision making, and what is the future utilization here?
Do you want to explain the geometry of the site and kind of why we picked our
Yeah.
split?
Yeah, so this was interesting because this is a challenging site, regardless of what happens there. There's a lot of topography on it. Anyone that's familiar with it will recognize the hills that are on both kind of bookends of the site. So looking at it, trying to analyze exactly what can be done here, right? And without significant amounts of retainage and things that just wouldn't complement the neighborhood. This looked at a good way to find the ability to preserve what's always been traditionally considered the park area, which is basically the playground of the school, and respect that integrity of the neighborhood so it still remains that asset available, and not try and force something that is really a challenge to do. And instead, if there are funds available to do an improvement, say for playable fields, maybe those can be put to a park that's more suitable, I guess, from a topography standpoint.
Do you know if the school district has any plans on coming back to us to rezone the other parcel?
Yeah, I don't think that is their plan, and my conversations with them, as far as right now, it's zoned R16, I think, 5 or 6,
1-6.
which is basically matches the single family housing around the neighborhood. I think it would be difficult to rezone that anywhere near something that would be a concern as far as apartments and, the rumors that fly around about that type of thing. That's not a realistic thing I would put out there, no.
If I can jump in about that, conversations I've had with school board members, they would like to see single family homes. So that's not something that, at least the ones I spoke with, I mean, that doesn't make a decision, but they were highly motivated to make sure that stays single family so that can feed into the schools and things of that nature. That also lends to new single family homes that can enhance the value of properties in the neighborhood, that kind of thing. So that's what my little world, the conversations I've had, that's been what's been said to me.
Yeah, I think there's some early discussion about rezoning it to just slightly smaller lots so they could fit a bit more on there, increasing the value of the property. I believe way back there was discussion about that, and that's why I asked that. Not because, I know that we're not going to rezone that to apartments. We can make that clear to everyone listening.
Yeah.
But I guess that's why I asked that.
Yeah, there were discussions early on just about that, but they were just ideas and questions. And any change of zoning would come back before this group for approval. So
So what, the other question I've got regarding utilization is, one that came up right when this property, kind of its second iteration for possible purchase, was a parks utilization study that was going to be done citywide by the administration. Can you share where we're at with the completion of a parks utilization study to determine whether or not this particular piece of property serves the needs within the community?
Yeah, they finished and have a draft that we're reviewing internally with staff, trying to get all of our comments and everything else addressed before we're ready to try and present it to prime time. But I know that's something that we'll want to take and finalize and then be able to share with the group and everything else. And so it has interesting information for this area as far as walking and utilization and what and where. But the prime items we were specifically looking at for utilization on this field would be practice space, which becomes a premium, especially for some of the other events and things that we have going on, and would be a benefit to the neighborhood, especially be able to walk to practice and other things of that nature. And so those are some of the items we'd look for specifically and currently in this space.
Is this something that'd be available to us prior to the request for a budget amendment to purchase the property?
That's a good question. Let me see what I can find out and see what form it's in.
Thanks, Taylor.
Another question I have is the appraised value. I've kind of mentioned this before. I mean, that actually isn't a shocking number. It really doesn't seem too bad, but if we are buying property that is open space for open space, it seems like the value should be based off of the appraised value of open space. Was that the case, or is that how did all that happen?
And I think I understand what you're saying, and it is a challenge when you look at something and say, well, that's an open space, and it should be that. The reality is it's not zoned open space. And so anytime we get an appraisal for that, the appraiser doesn't care what it's been used for. They're looking at that zone, and it's zoned for single-family homes. And
Right.
so he's going to appraise it. They're going to appraise that based on that. And so we can ask, like, could you look at this as open space? And they'll just say no, because that's not what we do, right? We look at the current zoning and we can give you an appraisal on that. Anything other than that would not be an accurate appraisal.
I'm with you. Okay. I don't want to poke the bear either, but
No, that's a good question, though. Intuitively, you would think that would be the case.
One of my concerns is not where this property is about how much is going to cost the city to maintain this property, because we are not going to get taxes from this property at all. It's basically for the community, and I know the community wanted, but those are my concerns. Since we are into budgeted, we have other expenses. So do we have any projection about how much as city we are going to expend in, I don't know, water, maintaining, greening, and all those kind of things that we are already expending in other parks?
I have a quick number. One item that we do need to update would be, for instance, the irrigation system and some other items with that. We anticipate, in order to make the field usable and be able to show it in the form that we have there and make some of the rest of the improvements for park space, could be close to around $100,000. And that would be in addition to the price that we're talking about above. And so that doesn't include ongoing maintenance, but those are all great concerns and questions, because you're correct. Currently, I believe the school is in charge of a lot of the other items, and we would then come on and add it to our inventory and have to take care of it.
So a couple mechanical questions. So the full parcel was surplused, and we entered into an agreement to buy the full parcel. And so I appreciate there's probably negotiations going on and discussions about splitting that. And I guess that's probably the case, is that city looked at this and said, if we are going to use it as a park, it doesn't make sense to have the lower section that slopes so much. And so I guess confirming that's the case. And then does the school district maintaining parcel B, if they decide to do something in the future, will they need to go through the surplus process again? Or have they met that requirement and then now they can go to a private seller and say, I want to turn these into homes? And so I just was curious about how that
Yeah, so just to clarify what this, when we basically notified them that we were interested in the parcel, it's not a formal agreement like a real estate purchase contract, but it does say that, yeah, we were interested in the parcel. The conversation, negotiations since then have progressed to where now we have a formal real estate purchase contract, which just says the city is under contract to purchase that parcel A version. The surplus process is complete at this point. And so they don't need to go, we're the entity that would be purchasing from it. They don't need to go back again and ask us again. Basically, if we would buy it, that time is done. And so they, at this point, could then move forward and list the property or sell that out at their decision.
And then another question that I've had with this is, you know, we have a lot of improvements going on around the city, Lester Park being one of those, the 4th Street Park. Does this purchase put in jeopardy or delay some of the improvements that are being considered in other parts of the city?
Part of our capital project plan, it wouldn't put anything in jeopardy at this point. I think we're just planning accordingly, trying to be prudent with the wins for the residents, the city, and the school district, specifically on this park, and then trying to utilize and move the other projects forward as we've described through the different presentations and budgets that council has seen to this point.
What does the timeline look like going forward on this as it pertains to when we're going to be asked to make a decision and what kind of process will lead up to that?
I guess that's a budgetary question, maybe.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. I was kind of waiting for the right moment. So your approval is kind of a unique one because there will not be a real estate purchase contract or some kind of another, resolution or something that's brought before the council. Your role is purely budgetary. So in the proposed budget, there is some additional funding that's proposed from BDO lease revenue and some unallocated CIP funding that would be enough to allow the mayor to purchase this property. So that would be your decision as to whether you keep that funding in the budget for FY27 or not. There's about $700,000 in the budget already. As you can see from the estimated value, that's not quite enough to cover that. So if you were to approve this additional funding in the budget, that would be enough to allow the mayor to execute that purchase contract.
So, question.
Go ahead.
So we don't have enough money for buy the property, but we can move money around. So how much is going to cost the irrigation system and change that irrigation system? Is something we need to do it right now after buying the property, or is looking in the future where the money came from? Do we have the money for doing that, or do we not need to create other fee for the community, like pay parking? I don't want to bring that, but I mean, we need pay parking in order to pay a debt. So I don't want to put the city again in a debt and then get money and collect money from the people who already struggle.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. The proposal before you is for the budget to purchase the park, and then there would be improvements that would have to go along with the park that would have to also be budgeted as well. And so the irrigation line items, everything else would become a project cost that we would otherwise have to budget for and prepare for. As far as putting it off in the future, I don't think it would be really far in the future. It would probably be based on when the school is moving in to make their development, because as soon as the lots on the bottom half would change, we would have to have and make our necessary improvements for the space to still be usable.
So just I'm just gonna, and I've kicked this around for a while, and for me, this is more than just a decision for the neighbors around this piece of property and their desire to see this become a park. I've got to consider all of Ogden, and that's why I asked the question about the complete parks utilization study. About a month ago, we heard the mayor lead off his budget proposal by acknowledging and stating boldly, there's not going to be a property tax increase. And in that, I'm reading his sensitivity to the economic circumstances that our population currently finds itself in. No, we're in an unstable time economically at this point in time, and we've got tight budgets. In this neighborhood, and I did this on Google Maps today, Thomas Park, 3/10 of a mile from the corner of 21st and Buchanan. J.C. Park, half a mile from that same location. Lions Park, half mile from that location. The 22nd Street Trailhead, half a mile from that location. There are neighborhoods in this community that would love access to park space and trailheads like this neighborhood has. The purchase price is one thing. The cost to improve this property into park space is another thing. To irrigate this property in perpetuity, especially in a drought-ridden state, is another consideration. And then we've got to maintain this park in perpetuity as well. This is expenses that will fill our budget every single year that the council sits down to review budgets. And what does our park budget look like? And all of this burden will fall on the backs of taxpayers at some point in time. If instead this entire property were built as single-family houses, we'd bolster our tax base with properties that would pay property taxes rather than impose additional burdens on our taxpayers. It would increase housing availability in the city of Ogden. It would fill those households perhaps with kids that could in turn fill our school buildings in a school district that has seen consistent year-over-year declines for about a dozen years. And then we can invest these dollars in the parks that we have that need our attention. We're band-aiding Lauren Farr's pool year over year, and we'd like to do something for that neighborhood as well. Lester Park is another one. We are in the 10th year of improving Lester Park since that contest to come up with a new design was commissioned in 2016. We've got a desire to improve our ballparks out at 4th Street. So I think we've got plenty of need and scarce resources to support the need that for park maintenance, improvement, and use, and that the dollars that we would spend here could be better allocated to the park space we already have and making them more usable. And allow this particular neighborhood to grow with single-family housing. And that's kind of where I stand on this one.
Well,
So-
I'm going to chime in a little bit and say, this isn't the time when we have to decide what about this. This was really just an information item.
However, it's
well-
in the budget.
Oh, I know, but I'm pointing out that that was an appropriate discussion point. I just think it's going to happen. We're going to have it again. Is kind of what I think. Isn't that accurate?
Yeah, as we go through the budget, like I said, particularly in the work sessions the first part of June, so those first 2 weeks, this is where we collect the issues that you all want to have more discussion about. So this would be one. And if the council gives direction to take this money out, that's where we would have those conversations. That's what would be reflected in that Schedule A1 with the final budget. So we will have additional chances to talk about it.
Okay.
And I'm just looking at the amount of items we have on our agenda still and the time we have left to do it. And I'm going to propose that we, kind of keep that in the drawer and discuss it when it comes back up. Fair enough?
Good enough.
You got any more, Jeremy?
That I don't, but I think I'm next.
You are next. Yeah, we've got the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative renewal. So Jeremy, go ahead.
Great. Okay, this is an exciting presentation. Quality Neighborhoods runs dear to my heart for a lot of reasons. And some of the points were brought up earlier in Jared's presentation. So I'm gonna try and not be redundant, but kind of touch on some of the same items. He mentioned the renaming of our division, and a lot of it has to do with this initiative. The focus as we look forward is shifting more, whereas it's still community, but we want to be very specific about what we're talking about. When our division, what we deal with is essentially the health and the quality of our neighborhoods here in Ogden. So just to give you just a brief history on where this came from, Quality Neighborhood Initiatives actually started about 10 years ago. 2016, it was adopted in a joint resolution to create a framework basically for what to do with the public funds that we have so that we're coordinating them in a way to have the maximum benefit for our neighborhoods. This was set up, I guess, more of a big umbrella for some direction on specific programs. So a few weeks ago, I was here talking to you about our HUD programs, and we receive a lot of federal dollars that addresses very specific projects that go towards revitalization and homeownership opportunities and just some really great programs that our division manages. In addition to that, we have received over the past 10 years, $1 million per year towards the benefit of neighborhood improvements, and that the majority of that has gone towards purchasing of properties and finding opportunities to help revitalize neighborhoods. And so our mission when this started, I'll just read it, was to stabilize and revitalize Ogden's neighborhoods as neighborhoods of choice by establishing a pattern of public investment that catalyzes desirable and appropriate community development. That was the mission then, and with that mission, we looked for opportunities to really reach out and do things in the neighborhood that could really turn some things around. So you'll be familiar with a lot of these, but one of the biggest, most visible programs we have is through the infill development program, Ogden Bungalows, Stonehill, and most recently Sycamore Cove. These are great examples of infill developments that have been basically a good shot in the arm for the neighborhood, specifically in the East Central neighborhood, for helping revitalize and breathe life into some neighborhoods that have historically struggled. In addition to infill development, we have a home preservation program and home revitalization rehab. I threw in, we've done hundreds of these, but this is one of my favorite examples. This is on the block of 2300 and Quincy Avenue. It's actually the same block that the Sycamore Cove infill development's on. We were able to locate and target specific homes that had really needed love. And so these are those examples that through this program, we were able to go and renovate and restore some really cool historic homes, bring them back to life, sell them to owner occupants, and just help turn that neighborhood around. In addition to that, some of those things that also this Quality Neighborhood Initiative does is public improvement projects. And these are less visible as far as we don't talk about as much because they're not as sidewalks, in my opinion, at least, are just not as fun to talk about. Taylor's going to disagree. But they do make a huge change, right? When we look at this street, this is the 2300 block that I talked about. And you can see the sidewalk and the disrepair that it had fallen under. We were able to team up with our public services department and do a joint project here where we put in a new sewer line, we replaced new asphalt or new pavement, new sidewalks, and if you drive down that street, you'll see the change that's happened. It's truly a great example of the turnaround there. And as Jared mentioned in his the most current public improvement project we did was putting new sidewalk all around Lester Park, and that was a great project we just completed this past fall. And I just want to throw out some of the accomplishments over history. So while the Quality Neighborhood Initiative has been around 10 years, a lot of work's been happening long before that. And so just since these programs have started, these are the projects that have been completed. And that goes from our federal projects to our non-federal projects, but just a huge amount of investment has been done. This specifically really is in the East Central neighborhood, the majority of this. And the majority it also goes just to benefit low to moderate income homeowners. So significant help that's come our way, and we've been able to make a lot of changes in this neighborhood. When we look to the next 5 years, This has been very interesting because ever since I started at the city, we've pretty much engaged in the same programs and been able to perform pretty accurately and be able to plan on exactly how our year would go. A few years ago, this began to change. And it's no secret that there's a couple markets that really have influenced that change. And I'm just going to touch on those real quick. So this first one is the overall housing market, 2016 to 2026. What has happened, right? We can see that in 2016, 10 years ago, the average median sales price of a home, if you're looking at that bottom line, that's Ogden, was around $200,000. And over just the past 10 years, it steadily climbed in 2022, peaked at around $400,000. So doubled in just a handful of years there, and has kind of been steady, right, bumping along that. And I put the other cities on here as an example, just so we don't feel picked on, right? Because when we look at just us by ourselves, we're like, oh man, Ogden is just, it's brutal. And it is, right? The housing affordability has just been very tough on everybody, but it's tough everywhere. And it's unfortunate, but that is something that we're dealing with along with everyone else. We just happen to still have enough housing inventory in this lower price point that we're still considered, I wouldn't say necessarily affordable, but more attainable than some of our surrounding communities, right? So the other market that we really has impacted this significantly, we don't talk about as much, but it's the construction costs that it takes for housing. In this graph, you can see back in 2016, construction costs were about $100 per square foot for construction or renovation of a home. And that in the past 10 years has doubled, We're well over $200 a square foot for these repairs. So why that's a big deal for us, just as we look forward to our programs moving forward, you know, we've been able to build a lot of homes and we've renovated a lot of homes. Being able to perform and do that consistently, we've seen a big decline, right? As Jared mentioned, 10 years ago, we're doing around 15 to 20 homes per year. That number, as you see our goals, has dropped significantly. We're down to 4 to 7 homes per year, and largely because it is so expensive to do these repairs. And this isn't just expensive for the city, but it's also expensive for our citizens. As they look to make repairs on their homes, what does it cost? What does it cost to put a new roof on, to get your sewer line fixed? And as we look at our stock, our housing stock, we can see that these are real problems. This is a real challenge that our city faces as the majority of our homes are old. We are blessed because our homes are smaller and they're on smaller lots typically. And that's what the state's looking for every city to do. And we've been really lucky in a way that we already have done that. We've met that need, and we did it a long time ago. The challenge we have is not what the rest of the state has. And the majority of the cities are dealing with trying to figure out if a half-acre lot is too small, right? And they're having those discussions. Ours is not that. Our discussion is how do we preserve this housing stock that's been such a great benefit to the working people of Ogden? How do we preserve that so it sticks around for another generation? And so as we retool and we look at the Quality Neighborhood Initiative, our perspectives have had to change. The idea that we can go in and buy parcels of land and develop them and build a bunch of new homes as a method to do a bunch of revitalization is becoming way more challenging, right? The idea that we can actually go in and buy the homes and renovate them and sell them, much more difficult. As you saw, the average price has skyrocketed. Our grants and our funding has not kept up with that, right? We're getting the same amount of federal funds that we got back in 1995, right? Our buying power is just eroding away. So we don't want to come here in another 5 years and show you the goal is to renovate one new home and build one new home. I mean, that's not a realistic thing to do. So we've really had to retrench and evaluate, what do we do going forward? What do we do with the homes that we have? with the housing stock that we have, with the neighborhoods we have. And the realization I'm really excited about, because we worked for months now trying to figure this out. What we've determined is that quality neighborhoods doesn't just come down to the neighborhood development or community development division. It isn't just our duty to do this, but there are so many parties involved in making this happen. And so, as Jared mentioned, we've been able to meet with each of the departments in the city. We have a standing meeting where we discuss the needs of each neighborhood, and basically focus on what's it going to take to move forward with these needs. So we've done some significant updates to this plan. And I'll touch on these, but what we'll see, and if you've had a chance to look at the packet, our quality neighborhood, the new version is much larger than the previous one. I think we had 4 pages last time. We're up to like 21 on this next proposal. And what that is we really want to flesh out, what does it take to truly make your neighborhood healthy? Is it just the houses that are in it? That's a part of it, but it's only a part, and there's a lot more to it. So what we've done, as I mentioned, we're meeting with all the city departments and getting them involved in what it takes to truly make our neighborhoods more healthy. And that goes outside of just our city, right? That there's a lot of nonprofits and organizations, community organizations out there that are very interested and are doing a lot of great work to improve our neighborhoods. So we want to make sure we're all on the same page and we're working together to make that happen. As I mentioned, we're looking to move away from this direct acquisition of property and focus more on needs-based neighborhood improvements. So as the opportunities to do direct acquisition and houses are fade, we want to make sure that we're looking at what are the other things that we do so that we can still have these huge impacts in neighborhoods, and encourage the actual homeowners that are there to pick up the reins and provide resources in a way where our neighborhoods can stay healthy. And so we've reevaluated the core characteristics of what that means to have a healthy, quality neighborhood. We've changed the guiding principles where we'll make decisions and how we implement that as well. So just real quickly, the core characteristics, a lot of these are very similar to what we've had in the past, because the reality is we just ask the question, what makes a healthy, quality neighborhood? And it's basically, I ask the question, well, what do you look for in a house? If you were moving to a new neighborhood, what are the things you would look for? And almost everyone comes up with the same list every time. And these are the things that they say. We want a good residential community that has access to commercial, usable open space around it. We want to make sure that it's safe as far as transportation goes. Are there places for bicycles? Are there places I can get out and walk? What about driving? Are there buses nearby? Are all those transit options available to me? What is the design and the identity of the neighborhood? Are there things that stand out that are just cool? Like I'm really happy. I love the way the homes look in this neighborhood. I like the style, I like the history of this specific neighborhood. And are the houses the choices that are out there, are they available? I'm looking for this type of home and this is where I'm at in this stage of life. Is that an option in where I'm looking? Community connections such as parks, public spaces, neighborhood gatherings, all those, are they available? And then safety and stability. Do I feel safe? Is this a place that I'm not worried about at night, that I can feel good saying that I can hang out outside and be okay, right? And then finally, economic sustainability. Do I see this neighborhood as a place that's trending well along with the other neighborhoods around it and within the region? Is there economic sustainability where I feel like my investment in my home and my neighborhood is going to be maintained? So those are the core characteristics we look at when we evaluate neighborhoods. One of the big shifts that we're making is taking this not just into the East Central neighborhood, but we want to really look at all the neighborhoods in the city. We're using this map as kind of a base. You'll recognize it as the community plan map, and that may be changing a bit, but we look at it just right now for an opportunity to identify, if we dial down and we look at each neighborhood, what are the characteristics of it? What are its strengths? Where are the things that it's struggling in? And then we do a detailed analysis on those things and try and identify where are the spots that need help. And so we can then take that approach and line up the resources available, whether it's through the city or community partners, to try and address those needs. The public-private partnerships, the best example I can think of recently is the one that we talked about briefly with the 605 North Jackson, right? This was something in the past, the city just did this. This was an infill project that the city was just going to do, just like we did Stonehill and Ogden. We bought property from the school district. We asked for a CIP to put the road in. We were going to build the homes, and we would sell those homes, and it would be a great project, right? And in the past, we've done RFPs. We did RFP on Ogden. I remember when I started here to get that going, and we had zero interest. No builder. I think we had one submitted, and they basically said, give us the land and pay us a bunch of money. It was just a huge list of things like, wait, no, we can do this ourselves and do it right. And so we've taken that model and just lived by it for a long time. We tried it again with the 605 North Jackson, and it was great. We had a huge interest list, a lot of submittals into it, and we're moving forward with that, where the city now is able to recoup those costs and be able to get the same product that we would get if we were building it through a development agreement, and partner with them to go through that. And those funds will then be returned to us to use for other things. So that's an exciting example of that. And we look at that. That's a big example, but partnerships are going to be very key. We have a lot of groups out there that are doing stuff in the community, as I mentioned, and we want to make sure we're partnering and supporting them in a way so it's not just the city doing stuff, because it's not. We have a lot of great organizations out there doing awesome stuff, and they need to be acknowledged and supported. So the third principle is we want to be sensitive to make sure we're addressing housing options across all income levels, making sure that we're not just concentrating on one type or another, and also in what neighborhoods. Like I mentioned, that's the sign of a real healthy neighborhood, is making sure in your neighborhood you have the option to be there regardless of what your income is. Housing preservation is probably the biggest. And I touch on this, but I look at our city and how unique it is. Ogden truly is special in a lot of ways, and our housing is probably one of the most special parts of that. Like I mentioned, our homes are great because they're already small, and they're exactly what everyone is looking for, but they're just old and they need love. And so part of that is us. We have programs in place right now that are in supporting that, right? We may not be able to buy the homes as much as we used to and renovate them and sell them, but we have things like our HELP program, which is there to help homeowners actually renovate their homes. And they do that for a low interest rate, and that they can actually get in and make those corrections themselves through a contractor that preserves that product that we're trying to keep around. Infrastructure and public assets. This is a big change that we're looking at with this next round of quality neighborhoods. In the past, we've primarily focused on housing, right? And on a small scale have done some infrastructure and public assets, but now we're looking at things like, truly, what is going to make this neighborhood awesome? What is it suffering from right now? Is it the park? Is there something happening in the park that just needs love? Is that an option that we can get in and fix? If it's not funded enough through other programs, do we have the ability to do that? And you'll see that when we did our annual action plan, we had a huge line item change in our federal money budget, right? That went to public improvements and park improvements. But we expect for that to totally embrace some of those projects and take them on because they strengthen the neighborhood overall. And that comes down from everything: parks, public improvements, sidewalk, you name it. What is it? We'll look at every neighborhood and try and determine what's the need here and how can we address it. And then the final one is just regional collaboration. As everyone knows, Ogden City is built out. You know, we've been built out for a long time. No matter what decisions we make as far as going forward with housing and new product coming in, it's not going to do much as far as moving that dial to the actual needs of this state and this region. We look at things at what is it going to take when we currently have been providing the majority of low-income housing and subsidized housing, which we'll continue to do. But how do we get on board, or how do we get our community partners, as far as our surrounding cities, on board to collaborate and understand that any growth that happens in the future, they need to be a part of, right? And so having that conversation, forming those partnerships with the groups doing that is going to be critical to making sure that the needs are met for the next generation going forward as well.
We're running a little short
Okay.
on time,
I've got
so.
2 slides left. Is
Okay.
that, we'll wrap it up here. So anyway, I'll just touch on these. The big part of this new plan would be basically, like I mentioned, taking each neighborhood very specifically and addressing those needs. We do the analysis to determine where they're at and what the opportunities are, and that involves engaging with the community, finding out what the true needs are, not just what we think they are, right? But trying to embrace, like, what is the concerns here and how can they be addressed, involving all the stakeholders involved in that as well. And then we create an action plan to move forward, and then we evaluate it. How's it doing, right? Do we need to revise some of the things we're doing? How can we improve it? So we already went over the federally funded thing a month or so ago. And like I mentioned, this is the big umbrella. Our division and Quality Neighborhoods uses a lot of this, the federal money to implement on these specific programs, and we'll continue to do that. Another big portion that we manage through is non-federal money, city-funded money, and this was the past 5 years of how those funds have played out. The majority of this, and it's based on the intent of this program, and through the $1 million per year has been in the past for the infill acquisition and development of projects moving forward. That is something we're proposing changing moving forward, just based on the information I'm giving you. Those opportunities are no longer as necessary or even plausible, right? So we would be looking to receive that same amount, but shift it more into that needs-based program. So as we look at the neighborhoods, what are their needs? And it would align very similarly with our federal funds. The nice part about this is it has a little more freedom than we have with our federal funds. There are only eligible areas that we can use those funds on. And so this gives us a little more ability to make improvements on more of a citywide basis. So the outcomes we're proposing after all said and done, and we'd look to come back and report that how this was a success, is that we preserve our housing stock, improve neighborhood infrastructure, public assets, increase our private investment, preserve affordable homeownership opportunities, and be able to have a stronger regional housing system. So how'd I do? Got any questions? I'm happy to take a couple minutes of that, or unless we need to break.
Questions? Yes.
We'll have this presentation again, is that correct, in the council meeting?
It's not gonna be this long, but I think we do present it in a public meeting. Is that right, Glenn?
Yeah, we do have it scheduled for next week. So traditionally, this has been approved by both the council and the RDA. So it's on both a council meeting next week and an RDA meeting next week. This was done to coincide with the potential approval of the RDA budget, which includes the $1 million for the quality neighborhoods next week. So that's the tentative schedule.
That being the case, I have several questions and some follow-up, but I'd prefer to do that when we have a little more time. But I want to say thanks to Jeremy, because this is one of the most important projects that we're working on for our neighborhoods. So well done.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got more questions as well, and I guess we'll have opportunities to answer those. But as someone who lives in one of these Stonehill homes, I appreciate the work that's done in the past, and I also appreciate the ability to adapt with the market. This looks like a whole rewrite of the program, so I think that's a good thing. Great.
So I'm gonna ask. Okay, we do have an option. We still have another item that we haven't hit yet on our agenda. And I'm seeing the ladies back there smiling, and I know they're cringing too. But we do have our open house that is scheduled to start in a minute. We can come back after our open house winds down. It has a definite stop at 8:30, but I don't know if it'll go that long. You know, we don't know. We just don't know. So we would, if there's a lot of questions that we need for Jeremy, we can take off or we can pick up where we left off right now and get those questions answered today or this evening. You guys appreciate that? Would you approve, would that be something you'd want to do? No, we can't do it right now, but we might be able to do it a little later tonight.
To me, it's important that we talk about a few things there, because this is a big paradigm shift that you're proposing, and I appreciate it. I think it's awesome. But
Well,
I'm up
and
for-
then we have the BDO lease revenue discussion that
and-
it's gonna kind of dovetail with this too, so.
Yeah. And then the arts grant funding as well.
Yeah.
We, Chair, with the art funding, I have a conflict of interest because I sit in different boards,
Sure.
so I don't know you want me to
Yeah,
leave the
well,
room or
during,
stay.
during the discussion, I'm not sure if she needs to leave. Is that?
Uh,
what the
that's,
rules say?
that's what the rules and norms say is typically,
Okay.
a council member would be encouraged to
Okay.
leave the room, yeah, for the discussion.
And that would let you off and you go home early. Okay, let's go ahead and recess this for now. We'll resume some questions when we get back. And we'll carry on from there. Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah. Hey, there's one thing I wanted to. No. I'll go.